All right. I'd like to reconvene the March 22nd Scituate School Committee meeting back to order at 6:03 via roll call vote. Ms. Brandolini,
Yes.
Ms. Limblom. You're muted, Ms. Limblom.
Yes.
Gates is a yes. Mr. Long.
Yes.
And Mr. Hayes.
Yes.
Great, thank you. I just want to let everyone know that, as usual, in response to Governor Baker's declaration of a public health emergency and the related emergency executive order dated March 12, 2020, over a year ago, it's crazy. Town of Scituate public meetings shall meet remotely until further notice. This meeting is being recorded and will be posted following the meeting. It's also being live streamed on the SCTV Facebook page. Public comment will be available. Community members can also email me at pgates@cit.org with comments. We will move forward on the agenda, and we are going to kick it off with celebrating student learning, Jenkins Elementary School, and I believe Principal Long.
Good evening. Thank you for having us and this opportunity to share our celebrations of learning happening at the Jenkins School. We have a team here tonight of our 5th grade teacher, Marie Fiddler. We have Miss Tracy Duffy, our art teacher. Miss Liz Dorkin is our STEM teacher. And also Lydia St. Ange, who's our 5th grade remote teacher, was involved in this activity as well, as she teaches the 5th grade remote students across the district. So I will turn it over to Marie Fiddler and Liz to get that going.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chairman Gates, for this opportunity to share our exciting work here at Jenkins School. One of our goals in the 5th grade team has been to expose students to new ways of learning while in the hybrid and remote models. And Liz is going to show you.
Wait, hold on. I got to share it on the screen. I got to get the picture up. Sorry.
No worries.
All right, let's see if this works.
Looks great.
Can you guys see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Awesome. All right. Sorry, Marie.
No worries. Perfect. So this has been most impactful in our science curriculum, where so much of the learning traditionally comes from inquiry-based group work in the classroom. To meet new demands, we chose to reformat our existing units to give students the opportunity to preview lesson information during independent learning at home, confirm understanding of concepts and gather data through individualized lab experiences in the classroom, and collaborate and demonstrate the application of concepts during synchronous remote class time. What you see here in this first slide is a mix of in-class labs, including building paper towers to practice the design process, using flashlights to learn how distance affects the observable brightness of stars, using balances to test the conservation of matter, and witnessing a chemical reaction to remove tarnish from pennies. The Google Meet photos are an example of students sharing mixtures and solutions they found around the house. Go to the next one, Liz. Thank you. Our water filter design project is the culmination of our water unit and utilizes a Museum of Science kit purchased through a CEF grant. This was the first unit we modified to meet the demands of students in all cohorts. Their goal was to build a cost-effective water filter, choosing from materials they tested and learned about in school. First, they learned about water filtration through in-class lab demonstrations and video simulations. Next, they were asked to imagine and design their filters. Some classes chose to build a class water filter prototype and use remote learning time to graph their ideas, study their data, and come up with design consensus. They tested the water filter in class and then individually made improvements to this design. So this is their Imagine work. Liz, you can go ahead to the next slide. These are some examples of the graphs they did through Google Forms. They inputted their data, and we could see this right in our remote learning classes. This is a collaborative design for a class water filter. And this is their testing results so that they could see this. And then they went on to build their individual designs. And in the next class, next slide, other classes chose to build individual prototypes for materials provided in their take-home kits. They presented their results during remote class time and then created new designs with changes based on their test results. So they just did it in a flipped model. And this was based on the needs of the students in the classes and the family support we had in our various classes. So you can go to the next slide, Liz. During this cross-curricular water unit, students learn about the need for fresh drinking water around the globe. They study Scituate's own watershed system, as well as read other articles and stories from around the world. As students learn about their impact on this precious resource, they study the movement of water on Earth and illustrate this important vocabulary through artwork. And our art teacher, Tracy Duffy, will tell you a little bit more about the STEAM connection.
All right, so last year we started our work with art integration. We had 3 blocks a week allotted to go into the classroom and work with classroom teachers to collaborate on various subjects. So we wanted to continue that work this year, and so I've been teaching fully remote. So we wanted to find a way to still make that integrated learning experience possible. So I've been working a lot with the 5th grade. We've done some ELA collaboration projects, but mainly we did some science and art projects together. So one project we did last year that was really successful that we wanted to continue on with this year was with the water cycle unit. So here are some examples of students' artwork. Next slide. And so the goal was for students to use a variety of materials to create a detailed diagram showing the process of the water cycle. So during art class remotely, I facilitated a lesson on landscape drawings where we learned about the fundamental components of a landscape. We then looked at examples of diagrams to gather inspiration for our own depictions, and students were required to label and use arrows to demonstrate their understanding of the key vocabulary words. So some students had cut out vocabulary words and some wrote their own. And then lastly is a slide of the rubric. Oh, there's one more. So prior to implementing this project, I observed learning taking place within the classroom. The grade 5 team and I had met previously to plan and discuss lesson objectives before as well. So being in the classroom learning space while the learning was taking place helped me to better familiarize myself with the material, how the content was being taught. Oh, I want to go back one, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. How the content was being taught within the general classroom and the dialogues that took place and so on. So that helped me to better teach the lesson during art class by me being a part of those classroom discussions. And then lastly is the rubric that the students were given for their diagrams. So the word bank, criteria, and self-assessment and teacher assessment.
All right, so I'm Liz Dorgan. I teach all 3rd and 4th grade in the district STEM. And normally I would do an engineering program through the Museum of Science, but because it's all hands-on collaboration, we had to make some adjustments this year. So I worked with the Museum of Science, and they came up with what they call a virtual learning path. And with the help of amazing paraprofessionals at Jenkins, we put together 425 engineering kits and journals to send home for this unit. So the 3rd graders did a unit called The Sky's the Limit, and they dove into aeronautical engineering and they designed models of flying technologies that would help NASA collect aerial photographs. So we actually studied aerial photography for a week or 2, and then we went into the social studies part of it. We traveled over the world's largest desert, the Empty Quarter, and we talked about how this one aerial photographer could get pictures of such a harsh environment. So the kids had their journals, they had their kits, they were very excited. It was all remote, so it was a challenge. Some kids wanted to make their own things out of the kits, but most of them followed directions. So just like the 5th grade, we used the same exact engineering design process diagram, and this carries on up to middle school and high school. The kids actually, to introduce them to aerodynamics, we used how a soccer ball works, the aerodynamics of a soccer ball, because I'm a soccer player. So, and then the kids had little projects like to make drop copters, and then they designed flying discs. But then the final project was for them to come up with an aerial photography vehicle. So something that would fly and hold the little person that was in their kit to take pictures. So this is one of our students demonstrating at home and very safely. I encourage them to get up to a high spot, but not to be in a dangerous place. And we wanted to have a showcase at the end. So we did a flip grid, which is when the kids make videos and they're all dumped into a, where only the class can see, and they shared their projects. So the 4th grade went with Go Green, which was engineering recycled racers. And again, we traveled to Senegal, Africa. We did a little virtual field trip where there's an actual marketplace for just recycled, and people make their living out of rebuilding things and selling them. So the kids had all these recycled items, and again, went through the process, the engineering process. We did a little scrap market engineering. They created a recycled racer. We spent a lot of time talking about wheel and axles, since that was the most important part of their car. And this is Marin, did an amazing job. And Marin's dad had a lot of fun too with this project. I tried to make it a family event and encourage people to work with their families at home to do this. And again, there was a journal, so the kids had to take notes, do designs, do sketches. There's an example of what the kits look like. They saw real pictures of kids at the marketplace in Senegal. And these are some of the Flipgrid showcase cars. A lot of different versions. We use CDs as wheels, bottle caps. The kids did a great job. And again, this was district-wide, not just at Jenkins. So I'm going to switch gears, a little engineering pun there, and wrap this up with my little friend Alden here. I have all these robots that are just been sitting around during the pandemic, and the kids learned coding online pretty easily, but the Blockly coding for the robots, they couldn't apply it. So I decided to put the robots to work, and Miss Lang, the school psychologist, and I came up with a little rewards program so kids could individually take turns using the dash robots that look like this. And this is Alden. It's a really cute video. I hope it works. Let me just make sure the sound is on. Let's check out Alden.
Hey, my name's Alden.
He talks really quiet.
A robot, and you might not know how to use it.
It's pajama day, by the way. So he's using an iPad to control and program what the dash robot is doing.
That's where you move it. That's right. That's left. Yep. I mean, that's right. That's left. That's north. That's west. And those are the sounds. That's the sound symbol. That's siren. That's tire. That's trumpet. And that's a cow. That's an elephant. And that's a dog. And
So Alden is definitely going to be part of the new robotics team at the high school. I'm starting them in kindergarten, so they'll be all set to go by their high school. So that wraps up.
hey, my name's
I'm gonna stop sharing. Sorry.
Thank you all. That was great, just example of teachers coming together in the best interest of kids and really not letting anything get in the way of educating our students and really thinking outside the box. So thank you for the presentation, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity.
Great, thanks very much. Yeah, as I always tell the kids when they give their student update, it's nice to see that learning is still happening, and you guys just demonstrated that by going above and beyond and still making sure that kids are learning as best they can through this. So thank you all for doing that. It's really nice to see. Any other comments or by the school committee?
Yeah, Peter, I'd like to comment, how just so impressive it is to see that, the whole presentation. I mean, aside from the pictures of the computers with the kids on it, like you really wouldn't know that it's, that learning is happening in these, hybrid times for the classes. I mean, it's so impressive. And I'm always amazed how young the kids are what they're learning at such a young age. When I think of, I learned computer programming like in high school. And to see it happening so young, I mean, it's great. It's fantastic. So thank you. Thank you for all the hard work to make it look normal,
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
all. This is great.
All right, moving on the agenda, the student report. Do we have Johnny, Celia, and Rosie with us? We can start off with Johnny if he's here. And if you are, oh, there you go. I got you, Johnny. There you go.
Thank you. So this past week, the Scituate Harborfront Street Gallery displayed art from SHS students at all levels. This included sculptures from Fiona Hartley and Lily Bergen, and 2D art from Sydney Marshall, Rowan Perry, Julia Levinson, Sadie Danahy, Christina Provost, and Lily Finkel. SHS will once again have a sociology class held next year, taught by Miss Emerson. Football and cheer had their first game last Friday against Hanover, and they won. The final score was 49-20. And spring sports have been approved for starting after break. We will have a few new teams, including sailing and girls golf. And I'll pass over to Celia. Thank you.
All right. Within these past few weeks, to listen and utilize the input of students, randomly chosen students have been asked to participate in sharing their ideas, experiences, and opinions upon reopening during study blocks these past 2 weeks, which was administered by Mr. Luette and Ms. Hughes. This Wednesday, SHS is offering in-school SATs for juniors, which is, I think, great because it's nice to test in a safe environment. And over 150 students are participating. And finally, for the past 2 weeks, Allies Not Bystanders, the club at the high school which focuses on anti-bullying, inclusion, and positive student connections, has held 2 mini workshops with freshmen during homeroom time. The workshops address building relationships among one another and difficult scenarios high schools may encounter. The workshop groups were highly successful, and all the freshmen said they enjoyed the experience. And that's all.
Thank you. Is Rosie with us?
I don't believe she has anything to report tonight.
Okay. All right. As always, thanks very much, guys, for that report. Again, it's just nice to hear your voices and see you guys that things are progressing and school is actually happening. So thank you. Any comments or questions from the committee for our kids? For our high school students.
Oh, good job.
Great, thank you. All right, moving forward, item 5, presentation, phase 3 reopening plan, Superintendent Birkin.
Thank you, Chairman Gates, and good evening, everyone. I'm going to share my screen with the presentation. Okay. So just a little, some of this will be a review for some of us that have been to these meetings. Otherwise, it may be new. Just wanted to reiterate our reopening continuum, that we have currently in the orange, and we're looking to move to the yellow to turn in person with social distancing and other mitigation strategies in place for our students. And tonight specifically, we're talking about our 6 through 12 students. And here gives you a little focus on our 3 phases that we've been implementing. We're excited to roll out phase 2 next Monday. We're calling it opening day, similar to the baseball season opening it up, where our students are welcome back in full in-person K through 5 next Monday. So a lot of excitement in the district right now for that. And tonight's conversation is going to be about the yellow phase, looking to bring back our students in grades 6 through 12 for full in-person learning with the target date of April 12th. So phase 3, some considerations. The Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, the Commissioner and the Governor have communicated to schools that anticipated end of hybrid learning to return to full in school. They've already directed this for the elementaries and given a date in the middle schools. They have TBD'd the high schools. Outside opportunities to maintain social distancing. Looking at that April date, the weather has been great for March, but typically in April, the weather is much better, and the opportunity to open windows and be outside is obviously advantageous to having more students in buildings. Things to work out, logistics are a real huge piece of this. I know some people were curious about why that date. We've been working daily on the logistics, and I give our staffs and our principals and credit for doing that. But it takes time, and I'll give you some examples in a moment. And I've invited Dr. McGuire and Mr. Beatty here to kind of talk a little bit about their schedules later in this presentation. But scheduling is, typically as a former assistant principal and being tasked with scheduling at a high school level and a middle school principal at one time doing the middle school schedule, these are things that take an entire summer, and typically we start in January and February of the previous year, scheduling students. We're asking them to do this, I think, for the 3rd time in 1 year. And so it's really a lot of work, not to mention the moving of classrooms to make sure that we can social distance and also consider room capacity so that our students and staff are safe. For example, if you have a room of 25 students and at 3 feet apart, the desks simply don't fit, we'll have to move that class to a larger area. So all those logistical things need to be worked out just within the schedule. Lunch is a real big issue for us. Obviously, that 6 feet commitment is still an expectation when you're eating and have your masks off. When some districts were looking to move to having kids back without lunch and having them go straight to like 1 or 1:30 and then just dismissing them. We thought it was important to have lunch. We think when we saw the kids' survey results that lunch was very important to them. It's an opportunity to socialize, and we think we can do so safely. We have to order individual tables for that to make that happen. So again, another example of some logistical things, that ordering of a large quantity of desks for classrooms and for lunch areas takes a little time. We're on it, we've done it. Again, but that's part of the whole plan. Arrival and dismissal, handling now a full load of kids, also the traffic, making sure that we have safe traffic protocols. And at the middle and high school, just the way it's set up, it's always going to be a problem if we have school start at similar times to the middle and high school. And I think that's something we're wrestling with now, but we also are, I know Lisa and Ryan have met with Chief of Police Thompson and his team to look at traffic, and how we do that safely. Also parking for our students, especially the juniors and seniors that are driving to school. All of that needs to be worked out. Passing time, how do we do that and do it in a one-way direction? And at the middle and high school, it happens more often than obviously at the elementary, so a lot more complicated. And so that is being worked out with signage and plans and messaging. So all that kind of stuff is happening. And obviously the safety protocols about distancing will continue, mask wearing, washing hands, all the same things that we're doing now will continue. And the contact tracing protocols. We've done a real good job with that. I credit our nurse team for being outstanding, working with our local Board of Health, who have been outstanding as well. And then announcing those on a daily basis. Again, not every school district does that. We're proud to do that. We think people should know, and we're transparent about that. The next bullet is one of my concerns that people need to be aware of is the quarantining. It's simple math. When you bring people or students from 6 feet to 3 feet, in the definition of quarantine is within 6 feet for a period of 15 minutes or longer during the day, that may increase. And it likely will increase, especially if you have high school students traveling to classes and interacting with more students. So that's a concern, because right now we're able to not have a lot of quarantine students, but that number will increase. It's a fact when we go to full in-person learning. I wanted people to understand that. That's why all these mitigation strategies, and that's why all the community mitigation strategies that I'll get to with travel and with wearing masks at home and to outside and wherever you go, and following the protocols impact schools. And it will impact if we get a positive case, that, as we know, our research shows and the state research shows that school transmission is just simply not happening. It happens from outside and it comes into the school. So if people aren't following the protocols and we bring a case into the school, it's more likely that that child, now with more students in the building and at closer distances, will have to quarantine more people, and it will impact more people. Unfortunately, that won't be able to come into school on a daily basis. So I really want to emphasize the quarantining piece of this puzzle. Next, I want to talk about a huge piece to the safety of our students and staff is the vaccination of our staff. They've been pushed up, as we all know. Our town administrator did a wonderful job, Mr. Boudreau, of getting our staff 2 days testing over at the Marshfield Fairgrounds. And I wanted to share these data with you. We've got 200 slots, and we were able to, in short notice, a day's notice, get 175 people vaccinated from our staff. And so I think that's our commitment, to continue to work with our staff to get them vaccinated so that they're able to come into school a little bit safer. The second dose will be administered for those folks that got it on April 1st. Just some new guidance. As we know, it's changing regularly. CDC came out with something, I believe, last week that it now recommends that 3 feet apart is the new recommendation rather than 6. I just linked the update here of the article, and I just want to show you some highlights from their website. I will be sharing this presentation on Thursday Thoughts with our community as well. Revised physical distancing recommendations reflect 3 feet between students and classrooms and provide clearer guidance when a greater distance such as 6 feet is recommended. And those examples are for adults, for our teachers, while eating are 2 examples where 6 feet is still recommended by the CDC. And just so everybody knows, we put 3 feet here, but 3 feet's the minimum. In smaller classes and smaller groups, we're going to shoot for as much distance as that room will allow us with the number of students in there. And at the elementary level, some of the smaller classes are 4 or 5 feet, not even close to 3 feet. So 3 feet's the minimum. We will never go under 3 feet, but we'll shoot for higher than 3 feet, and we're getting creative in how we measure our classrooms to do that. So, and also we're ensuring that our teachers' desks and work area are also at 6 feet, because that's still the guidance. So if I click on this, these are from the CDC page, just some bullets to look at, to highlight here. Mitigation to prevention and social distancing to physical distancing. So they've talked a little bit about more language in the study on that. Next bullet talks about the revised physical distancing recommendations to reflect at least 3 feet between students and classroom, and provides clearer guidance when a greater distance such as 6 feet is recommended, as I pointed out. Clarify that ventilation is a component of strategies to clean and maintain healthy facilities. I do want to also point out that all of our elementary schools, we brought our RISE engineering back in, and they've certified that all our elementary schools are safe to be at full capacity. We've updated older equipment that we needed to be fixed, and did the same thing we did at the beginning of the year, and we'll continue to have that equipment. And so we'll be sharing some of those updates that we've done at the elementary with the community shortly. And so I believe this week or next week, we'll be starting the same process at the high school and middle school to ensure that our air quality is safe and meeting the guidelines of an increased capacity as well. So we'll follow those ventilation guidelines. I think we've done a terrific job on that. And by being proactive at the beginning of the year and fixing a lot of the windows and HVAC systems, it's going to pay off for us now as we get into the spring. New guidance also talks about allowing folks to open windows. Initially, that was not the recommendation and guidance in the fall. So by getting windows fixed in all of our schools and having that ability to open windows now to get fresh air in, and April coming on with the better weather, it's going to really help us in maintaining safer buildings. And then the removal recommendation for physical barriers. This talks a little bit about plastic barriers at lunch and things like that. They're just concerned about using them when you don't have to. If you can have 6 feet of distancing, it's better than having 3 feet of distancing with the plastic barriers, because those plastic barriers need to be cleaned regularly, and that's not always practical in a school atmosphere. Next bullet here are just the last two from the recommendations I took from here. This was just another study that was shared, and I put the link here for people to see a recent study that compared local schools from 3 feet and 6 feet. And the results were, and the third bullet talks about the results was similar after adjusting for community incidents. And that community incidents part is important because CDC talks about that you still have to keep an eye on your community spread. And just so you know, we still have our medical advisory committee that meets weekly and is on top of this. We're looking at the numbers. We still have the ability to go remote if things pick up or spike. And we're still very, very much attuned to what those numbers are and paying attention to that. So I just wanted to reiterate that, that hasn't fallen by the wayside. We haven't let our guard down, that we're very, very well aware of what the numbers are, and we're paying attention to those on a weekly basis and in our own school on a daily basis. And both of those is in previous documents. I didn't include again because I've included in the last two school committee documents. The numbers continue to trend down. They're plateauing a little at the town level, but still in a good place. And our school had 8 instances in a week. 2 weeks ago, 8 incidences last week, 3 weeks ago, and then last week 7. So we've gone 8, 8, 7. So we're kind of at and that's in the whole district. So those numbers are extremely low for the school. So the conclusion by this study was lower physical distancing policies can be adopted in school settings with masking mandates without negatively impacting students or staff safety. Just a key point to mention is that with masking mandates and other mitigation strategies. So all those things I talked about, and the reason why we're taking 3 to 4 weeks in between these phases is because we're taking a lot of painstaking efforts to make sure that we have things in place and that we're over prepared, if you will, to bring students back, and that our teachers are comfortable with the protocols and the actual ability to implement them in the school. Again, just a couple things on the April 12th date. And why not after vacation? April 12th is important for a few reasons. I think it gives us enough time to get all these logistical things done. The schedule, the input from the staff, more vaccinations for our staff. That will be over a month where our staff will have the opportunity to be vaccinated. We thought of that. Also, it starts the 4th quarter for the high school, which is a good time to transition into that. So we think for all those reasons. Also, we thought it was important to start the week before vacation and not the week after because we think we can, and it's important. We want our kids back as soon as possible and as safely as possible. But that next week, students are off on vacation, and after a week, especially at the secondary level, we'll have learned what we learned from the elementary students in school by then, which some of it may be applicable to the upper grades. But our administrative team will be working over that next week to assess what worked, what didn't, what needs to be adjusted, and it'll give us the time to collectively take our breath and kind of modify anything that needs to be modified after living it for a week. And I think that's a real good opportunity for us to have that week vacation in after the starting block. thought it was important to update the travel advisory for our school committee, but also our community. The new travel advisory is kind of, it's more of a encourages folks to report into quarantine when they've been out of the state from the governor. I've included a link to that. But I really want to emphasize to our families that, and I think I've mentioned this before, that with students and staff being closer together, if we're going on vacation, if we're leaving somewhere for April and we're coming back, we would like you to all still get tested, because we know now that the spread is going to create more more people to quarantine, and quite honestly creates a higher risk for the kids in school. And we don't want to go from all back in person to getting sloppy and then having to go all remote, because remember, hybrid's gone. If this plan goes through, it's all in remote are our options left. And if we let our guard down as a community and as a school, we could quickly remain, because we all know it hasn't gone away. We could quickly remain back into a remote situation, and we'll just go by the numbers. So I'm pleading with people out there to kind of take this very seriously, keep your guard up, and let's get through the rest of the school year fully in person with no slowdowns. Just a little review of the survey data from the last time. If given a choice regarding schooling in March or April through the end of the year, under 3 to 6 feet social distancing, we had over 88% in favor of that. And comfort level returning with the vaccine, this was our staff, was 80%, which is a strong number, and we're working with those staff like we will with the students on their anxiety of returning. I know we talked today or yesterday with Kelly about these upper grades and having some kind of a re-entry, and I know they're doing this at the elementary, taking it slow and just talking to the kids about how things are going to work and how we go from class to class to alleviate some of that anxiety. That's why I'm calling it opening day, because it will be like day one back to school. We're going to take it slow. We're going to explain to the kids, put them at ease, and make them feel comfortable as they return to in-person learning. This is the student survey as a review. And the question talks about when we're able to return to full in-person learning with safety protocols. And we just want to remind them that we're still using all these mitigation strategies, but that we may reduce from 6 feet to 3 feet to 6 feet in regular hand washing, sanitizing. How comfortable do you feel returning to your school building at 3 to 6 feet? And so we see here, this group here is concerning to us. We want to identify who these children are and make sure we support them. And I think the elementary school, I want to tip my hat to the principals of the elementary who proactively reached out to these parents, talked to them, talked to the students, teachers talked to the students. And so we'll be doing the same for the middle and high school. That will be proactively. Again, another reason for that time period in between is that we want to talk to the students that are anxious, that are extremely anxious. And then even obviously all the kids, but then you've got kids in this group that are uncomfortable, right? And then the neutral kids, we have to talk to them. Even the students that are comfortable and extremely comfortable, which is the higher number, we want to make sure that they're spoken to and eased into this. Next, we have a little bit about the secondary return. It would be a commitment to full in-person learning or fully remote learning models. It would no longer be a hybrid model. Similarly to what we did with the elementary, we would set a commitment form. What we learned with the elementary grades is that people wanted more information first. They wanted to see the schedule if they could to make decisions. And I think that was, a point well taken. So we're going to work to get the schedules out to parents and students to kind of look at them and give them as much information as possible prior to the commitment form going out. And that commitment form will ask a couple of simple questions like, are you coming back fully in person, or would you like to be fully remote? And keep in mind that option for fully remote learning is an option throughout the remainder of the year. So everybody will continue to have that model, an opportunity. Students will have the same teachers and classes, so that won't change. So the expectation for in-person attendance, this is really important. It's going to change a little bit from hybrid. Once we return to in-person, it's like a typical in-person school. If you're not there, you're absent. You're not going to be able to roll in and zoom into a class at any point. Because of the increased number of students in the building, the amount of attention teachers need to pay to that amount of students, it's not going to be possible for us to allow that flexibility, and it's not going to allow us to take accurate attendance. So people need to know that we'll have a strict attendance policy back to the normal attendance policy, that once you commit to in-person, you'll be expected to come unless you're sick, obviously. And then the remote class, and that allows us to keep our commitment of offering the opportunity for the fully remote C students and quarantining students. So I want to make that distinction as well. There's a difference between being home for a day or two or going, away or something like that than quarantining. If we ask you to stay home because you've been quarantined, then we'll be responsible for connecting with you and get you the work, right? So it's a little different than being absent. And again, these questions and details will be sent out. I also am proud of the fact that our principals at the elementary are now offering, I believe tomorrow night, parent forums. And I strongly recommend that parents go and have a conversation and ask your questions and get those answered. And we'll be expecting the same for our middle and high schools once that information's out. And we get information back on the commitment surveys. We'll have forums for parents to be able to come and ask questions about student learning and what that looks like, as well as the students. And then, of course, every effort will be made to maintain the high quality of the Cohort C program. I also want to mention, and I know that the commissioner mentioned that since the goal is to get everybody back in school and understanding that not all kids and families are comfortable with that, that things may change slightly. It's a new phase, so there might be some slight changes, but we'll be able to certainly share what those changes are prior to moving to a April 12th date. All right, I'm going to turn this over now to Principal Beatty to talk a little bit about. We already have a kind of an example schedule for folks to look at, including the school committee.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us tonight. We are excited to be thinking about having more kids in the building learning. In order to do so, we will need to continue to prioritize safety. So a lot of what Superintendent Burkhead said will remain the same as we welcome more kids back into the school, including our protocols for arrival and staggered dismissal, one-way hallways, cohorting students within their core classes, having strict bathroom policies. Our biggest change, though, deals with our schedule. And this will be the fourth schedule that we have followed this year. So I'd like to commend our students, our staff, our assistant principal for all of the work they've put into kind of each draft schedule. And with each schedule that we've adopted, we've made tweaks along the way to make sure that it is working for people. So the draft we're presenting tonight has been collaborated on. We've gotten input from staff. Our instructional leadership team put this together, which we made a lot of tweaks to. Students filled out their survey, and we used that to kind of build different things into the schedule that we need to see. And then we used kind of all of the guidelines from DESE to put together what we need to do to make sure that students are safe. And so, as you can see, very similar to our current schedule, we will have a consistent A through G schedule, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. We'll be running 45-minute classes, a little longer for the first and last block to accommodate for that staggered arrival and dismissal, as well as attendance purposes. In this schedule, the biggest change is we are going to have to run 6 lunches. And I don't know of many schools that have ever run 6 lunches, but we will run 6 lunches because that is what we need to do to keep students at 6 feet apart as they're eating. It works out nicely because this means that students will be eating by team. Our dining commons in our gym accommodate 120 students, and so our lunches will remain identical to what they've looked like all year, despite having double the amount of students in the building, which makes us happy because it makes us feel safe. We will switch around kind of the order of blocks for lunch block just to accommodate where students are coming from so that it can be consistent every day. Students can have a consistent lunchtime, teachers can have a consistent lunchtime, all while thinking about safety in doing so. In this schedule, students during their lunch block will need an extra 22 minutes in their class. And we're calling this our Flex 22 because during this time, with the extra 22 minutes, students will be in that class. We're kind of providing teachers and students with the opportunity to do what they need to do. That would be a perfect time for an extended mask break if they are outside during the nice weather. It might be a time for students to ask their teacher for support that is in front of them. It might just be a good time to kind of get some work done and kind of have a little bit of either downtime or majorly structured time in those 22 minutes. And we have to do that in order to accommodate the 6 lunches within the schedule. And so we have heard lots of great ideas as we're pushing this out for how that time will be used. And that would be Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. Our Wednesday schedule, very similar to kind of how we've been doing it. We are going to be running shorter classes, and in order to run those shorter classes, we will be putting in an enrichment block. And during an enrichment block, we're happy that we're able to offer in-person band and chorus. We have our band and chorus programs have been working really hard to figure out how are we going to do the, in-person playing musical instruments and singing. When we have everyone back, and they have really been working hard and finding places within our building and kind of the high school to figure out how to make this work. And we're at the point where we can say it can work. And so we are able to accommodate that while other students are in their enrichment block, getting support from their teachers, going to one of their 6 lunches, and just making it work. So that's why our Wednesdays look a little different, just to accommodate for enrichment, band, and chorus.
Thank you, Mr. Beatty. Dr. McGuire?
Good evening. Thanks for having us today. We're really excited to talk about bringing more students into the building more often. The schedule that works best at the high school level is a return to our pre-COVID schedule. It gives us consistency and kind of reliability of our day change so that we can progress through our each of our course periods more frequently. And we are able to accommodate students in 3 lunches by moving from the small gym to the large gym for lunch. So we're using the large gym in the cafeteria that affords us seating for 340 students. We won't need that many seats for each lunch, but if there's a little bit of flex across departments, we do have the seating available, all at 6 feet distancing. So this is really our schedule. It is not very different from what we're running now. I think that the major changes are that Wednesday will be a regular day again, but it also gives us the H block built in. And one of the things we have heard from our students, from our families and our teachers alike is that connection time, that opportunity to work on some of the social emotional aspects and just building up the stamina of returning back to school all in for our students. That's a really great time and opportunity that they'll have 4 days a week to connect. On top of our schedule, some of the things that we're working on are parking for students. We've reached an agreement with St. Luke's and we're working with Scituate Police to be able to have safe passage from across the street, having our students arrive and depart in different areas of the building. So the front versus the side and the back entrances to just lessen the traffic in certain areas. And our passing time is short here, but students are doing a really nice job of getting to class. We currently have 5 minutes, and this goes back to our original 4. But we are asking that students not use the restrooms during passing time because we cannot contact trace during that time if there are 900 students, 800 to 900 students out and about at that time. So that will help the passing time and kids get to class. We have protocols in place now that students are doing very well with for restroom breaks, utilizing passes, water breaks, mask breaks. This is just an opportunity to really have a consistent schedule as we finish out for Q4.
Thank you, Dr. McGuire. Next, I'd like to just give a transportation update as these guidelines have changed. All bus routes, the good news is we're able to keep all bus routes as they currently exist by combining the cohorts. There'll be no more than 49 students per bus. Students will be in assigned seats, 2 to a bench with siblings seated together. Cleaning protocols between runs will continue. Windows will be partially open as prescribed by safety experts. And then we'll finalize the bus info and share it 1 week prior to starting the full return to school. So those commitment forms also ask if you your child plan on taking the bus. So we think it's important that you know that there'll be increased capacity on the bus, but they're also in direct guidance from DESE. Registration for those wishing to sign up for transportation is due as soon as possible. First come, first served basis. And again, we'll be getting that commitment for pending the vote tonight out to families as soon as possible. We've talked about student parking at the high school already, and parent drop-off and pickup at both schools will, obviously the traffic will increase. And then students that arrive early are allowed to stay in the Gates Dining Commons or the Scituate High School cafeteria. Brought a little bit about this to your attention earlier. All buildings will meet at least minimum airflow qualities. Students will be 3 feet apart, seat edge to seat edge. People often ask that question, so it's seat edge to seat edge. Cleaning protocols will continue, including sanitation of high-touch areas by custodians and our spraying overnight. And then the PPE will continue to be available for students and staff. Again, we have plenty, and we're very comfortable issuing that throughout the remainder of the year. So just a couple, again, found that these pictures are helpful for folks. So this on the left is the picture of the, social studies classroom at 3 feet distancing, 6 foot for the teacher's desk. And the room capacity number will be 28 in this class. On the right, it's a science classroom with a larger capacity of 31. High school example here. World language class at 3 feet distancing at the teacher's desk at 6 feet. And we even have some actresses in this slide, so that's pretty cool. The room capacity for that class is 28 students. So we're hoping that the visual can help you see what the classes may look like. Business classroom at 3 feet at the high school with a room capacity of 30. So our process and timeline to kick this off would be return our 6 through 12 students to 5-day in-person learning effective April 12th. The steering committee developed the framework. Our Safe and Strong Task Force at the last meeting offered input and solutions to how we handle kids coming back that we'll be using. We're using them for the elementary as well as middle and high school. Tonight, we're presenting the plan to you with a lot more detail. Negotiations will be ongoing. And again, they've been very positive and through our Wednesday phase 1 and through our Tuesday phase 2. So they'll continue on through phase 3. Building staff meetings have been a really terrific idea because the application of the practical piece of this, what happens actually in the classrooms with the schedule and how kids move about in the schools, is a collaborative effort between our administrators and our staff. And that's been ongoing at the middle and high school for a few weeks now. As you can see with the schedules already prepared. And then those schedules will be out as early as the 29th next week. And then we'd have commitment surveys out ideally also next week for parents should this be approved this evening. And again, phase 3 beginning 4/12. Just something that we like to say. I think there's a lot of momentum and a positive energy in the district and in the town. The enthusiasm, it doesn't cost us anything and it's really contagious. And I want to thank our staff for really focusing on this because our students sense it and I think they're living it. And I also want to thank our parents. It's been a long, tough year for you. I understand that. I appreciate your patience and your resiliency. And we're going to continue to work on enthusiastically returning our kids to school, doing it safely, and doing it the best. So that concludes our presentation for this evening.
Well, thanks very much, Superintendent Burkhead. That was obviously a lot of information. It's clear that you, as well as the other district leaders, collaborated across the district in order to, I'm assuming, it sounds like to me you addressed nearly every possible option, and I appreciate you presenting it in this manner tonight. So I have a couple of odd questions, but I'm going to open up to the committee first, as I usually do, so they have their comments or questions for you. So I'll open it up to the school committee. And you are free to unmute yourself and ask away.
I have a couple, just one or two questions. Regarding the lunch at the high school. So the kids that eat in the gym, they don't, there's no traveling like from the, like, is lunch served in the gym or?
Yes, so we were able, our cafeteria staff has mobile units and heaters that are in the cafeteria. We've been using those, the small gym. We've been using those all year. So we're just moving over to the larger gym to accommodate more seats. But they have a full setup at the front of the gym. Students come up and there are different lines, areas that are separated across the wall where they can come and get their pre-boxed lunch.
Okay, great.
Can I follow up on that, Ms. Lamont? That was one of my questions. Dr. McGuire, I don't know if is the gym being used after lunch period or is it just reserved for lunch?
No, right. It's just reserved for lunch moving forward. So we're currently in the small gym and we're trading with phys ed so that they'll have the small gym as dedicated space right now and we'll take the larger gym. With the opening happening in fourth quarter, they typically go outside more anyway. Okay. And wrestling hasn't been approved to run. So at this point, so those were really our two main questions of where to give people space, and the small gym will be adequate with the outside facility.
Okay, and I have just a question about lunch at Gates, because lunch is really the most important part of the day for the kids. Lunch, so it's only 22 minutes. What was it before COVID?
I went out. So I don't want to follow up. We do have an April 12th town meeting scheduled. So I just want to make sure that was part of the picture.
We have worked through that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
No problem. Yep.
No, I didn't want to throw that, but that was one thing that just came to my mind. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Another hurdle they had to work through to.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're good to go for that.
All right. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt. I got my internet connection was unstable. So sorry to interrupt, Ms. Lindblom or Mr. Beatty.
So Ms. Lindblom, we've had 4 schedules this year and lunch has changed each time. In a typical non-COVID year, lunch is 25 minutes. Right now, lunch is 30 minutes. And we're going back to 22 to accommodate for the 6 lunches that we can fit everyone in the dining commons and the gym.
Okay, so that's not too much time cut off. I thought maybe because the kids like to socialize and they can't really do that anyway, so they just have to eat and move on.
Yes, and it is, we do take lunch very seriously in the sense of we believe lunch is supposed to be that social time, and so we would love to have lunch for 4 hours if we could, but we 22 minutes is a good amount of time for kids to get what they need, and our food services staff has done a really good job of coming up with like a super efficient way where kids really grab their lunch and they have the entire period. There's no waiting in lines or anything like that. So it really it's a good time.
Great. And I just want to thank everybody for all their hard work on these schedules. I cannot even imagine the juggling that went into it. So I appreciate all your time and effort.
Thank you. Any other school committee members?
Well, I can speak now if you want.
Yep. Hey.
And as Janice said, I want to thank everyone. I mean, starting with Bill and the administrative team, the principals, and especially the teachers. I mean, this has been such a difficult year, and moving from the hybrid to all in is incredibly difficult, given that we're in the middle of a pandemic. And I am confident in this plan, and because I'm confident that I don't imagine, and I could not imagine any other school system doing a better job in keeping our staff and our students as safe as we possibly can, and up to date and going forward. So I'm just incredibly grateful for everybody's working and hard work. I still remain very concerned. I mean, we're not creating a safe environment. We're making it as safe as humanly possible, with acknowledging that we're in the middle of a pandemic. And I still have, concerns about the opening date, but I'm on board with the April 12th. I mean, if I was king of the world, I'd want to delay it till after vacation, but I see the reasons for going forward. And those are the ones I've had all along. I want to make sure all the teachers are vaccinated. Our positivity rate in Scituate went up last week. Variants will be, when we go full-time, variants will be the main virus by the time we go full in. And so, there are very grave concerns, in my opinion. I also want to just echo what Bill had said to our townspeople and our parents, is that a lot of the success of what we're going to be doing depends upon responsible people making good choices during vacation. And I can't emphasize that enough. And I'm not saying people need to not have a vacation or anything like that. But they need to follow the protocols and in quarantine if they go away and out of state. So I just want to, I don't think that can be emphasized enough. So I'm on board with this, and I thank Bill and everybody else, really. I don't think anyone could do a better job, and I'm very proud to be a small part of that.
Thanks, Mr. Hayes. That means a lot. I think that, to me, your tune has changed a little bit, and I think that goes to show that collaborating across the district and including the teachers and principals and Superintendent Burkett in the decision-making process really makes for success. So,
well, I don't think my tune has changed.
It has.
I'm still gravely concerned, and
okay.
Especially with the start date. But
understood.
But we have no choice. We have to go back full time.
Yep. All right.
Mr.
No,
Chairman
I appreciate
Gates?
your comment. Yes, Mr. Superintendent Burkhead.
Thank you. I just want, while it reminded me, Mr. Hayes had a question at the last meeting, and I thought it was in our presentation, but it wasn't. So while it's fresh in my head, I just wanted to share it with him. We've asked our teachers if they felt comfortable sharing with us voluntarily, our whole staff, not just our teachers, our entire staff, if they've been vaccinated. And so they don't have to, and some, based on their comfort level. So the number obviously is not a exact number, but we've had to date 223 of our staff reported that they've been vaccinated. And so I want to thank those that were able to share with us. We have close to 600 staff. Again, my assessment is that we Our number is higher than that, at least for first shots. But 223 has been reported. At least 1/3 have, at least we've got guaranteed numbers on that. And again, that's voluntary information. So I just wanted to get that information back to you.
Thank you, Bill.
You're welcome.
Mr. Long?
Yeah, I just have a couple of quick questions. And the first one just revolves around the transportation. So driving my daughter to Gates 2 or 3 times a week, there's a lot of cars going around. You see teachers crossing the street. Is there any talk about opening the schools up a little bit earlier in the morning to alleviate some of that congestion, just so we don't have cars all the way around, the block trying to get in, and obviously keeping our staff safe or students safe as they try to cross that walkway?
I guess I know we met with the police this week. Lisa or Ryan, has that come up, that the possibility of adjusting times a little bit or not?
Sure. So the drop off, both Gates and the high school will be, as we have been all year, allowing students into the building far before the bell rings. Gates students are able to be dropped off. We have supervision beginning at 7:15. So you do not need to wait until 7:30 or 7:45 or 7:59 to come. We can help, make sure your student is safe and you don't have to wait in the traffic if you come at 7:15 for an 8 o'clock start.
The high school was previously asking students to not be dropped off before 7:45, but we've now relaxed that and we're allowing students to sit in the cafeteria as well.
Okay. No, I think that's helpful, and sharing that when this plan goes out with the community, I think will be helpful, obviously, to keep people safe as they go in. And my only other comment for Superintendent Burkhead is just, there's a lot of great presentation in here, just how the classrooms look and the plan to move from one class to another. It would be interesting to try to get some feedback from staff and students that first couple of weeks, and for whatever our next meeting is after the 12th, to just understand how it's going. And then I know the administration is doing a great job of, changing on the fly to meet the needs of everybody involved, but just knowing how some of that changes, just so that the community can be aware, but also just how we're keeping everybody safe. I think that'll alleviate some concerns and hopefully change Mr. Hayes' tune a little bit.
We can certainly do that. And I just wanted to follow up on the traffic piece. We've been working with the Scituate Police, who've been wonderful, and we're trying to work on having actual officers help with the traffic flow out on, on those 2 main roads. And since we may have students parking across the street at the church. So hopefully that can help mitigate and move things quickly. So we spend a lot of time on the traffic. We understand that's a concern. And so I think by expanding those timeframes where people can drop off, I think people will become comfortable at a solid time where if we stretch that time out, like you kind of mentioned in your question, it's going to allow for a little less of a wait, hopefully, for parents. And then with the safety piece of it, trying to get the police or crossing guards involved so that our students are safe during that high volume time.
Okay. Great, thank you. And similar to what everyone else has said before, thank you for all the work you've put into this. Everyone involved has done an amazing job, and it's definitely helped put my mind at ease a lot, and just in terms of how we can get our kids back into school full time.
Thank you.
And Ms. Brandolini?
I don't have any additional questions beyond what everybody else asked, and echo everybody's sentiments of thanks and the enormity of the 4th schedule change. I completely know how much of a task that is. And Mike, if you get over to Gates at 7:35, it's a ghost town. It's when you need to go. Pull right up, pull right through. But I shouldn't give away my secrets.
Now we're gonna have.
I'll have you pick up my daughter from now on. Then.
And Bennett gives me a hard time because he dropped him off so early. Now he should know. I'm gonna have him watch this recording.
He'll be there at 7:15.
I know, right? He doesn't know he had it good.
Wow. I didn't know that. I didn't know that either. I didn't know that you could drop the kids off that early.
Yeah.
Now I just got to buy Mr. Beatty and Dr. McGuire a cot for their to sleep in their offices, and they can probably let people in at 6 if you want. Just kidding. Just kidding.
I have another question, Peter.
Yes, Ms. Lindblom.
I have a question about that second date for the staff that went to the Marshfield Fairgrounds. That's a Thursday. And I know that this, the effects of the vaccine, you know, the part of building up the your immunity, and getting those antibodies is sometimes a really bad like you feel really crummy. And if we have a lot of staff going on Thursday to get that second shot,
It's no school Friday. No school Friday.
What?
No school Friday.
Is that Good Friday? Oh.
Yes.
All right. Well, that's good planning then. All right then. Question answered.
Yeah. I had one. I think it's an easy one for Dr. McGuire. When is the tentative, or is there an official last day for seniors? And I'm thinking that will help potentially with the classroom sizes after that date.
It'll help with the passing time traffic for sure. It's May 26th. It's a Wednesday.
May 26th. So and I apologize for not knowing this, but our seniors are in some mixed grade classes, correct? So
Yes.
potentially if the seniors' last day is then that will open up some additional spacing theoretically come that, which is a long time away, but.
Yes, some classes are mixed, so that will be helpful. But just in the overall scheme of lunch and passing time and the number of students on campus, it's noticeable once the seniors move on.
Okay.
So that will be helpful.
Okay. That's really all that I had. I think that from my perspective, obviously, I think that all of us have to, I think everyone involved here, we're a little bit nervous and we don't really know what to expect. I'm going on a couple of things. Number one is, the vaccine announcement is significant for me. And then between the last meeting and this meeting, we've had the updated guidance by the CDC. So those things are really making, my thoughts on it. I feel much stronger about it. So I'm in full agreement with the plan. I think it's great. Obviously, I would prefer to get back sooner rather than later, but I think this is a good date on a variety of reasons, most of which Superintendent Burkett had mentioned. So again, thank you to Dr. McGuire, Mr. B, Principal Beatty, Superintendent Burkett, and all your staff. And again, I said it a couple of times, but I can really see, or it appears at least, that there's been some significant collaboration, and I thank you for coordinating and doing all that heavy lifting. Before I ask for a motion, I will open up to public comment. As we usually do on these larger items. If you do have if there's no other comments or questions by the committee, I would open it up for public comment. If you have a question, if you have a comment, you scroll over your name to the far right and raise your hand, and I will ask you to unmute, as well as identify yourself. And if you're not comfortable, just your name and school affiliation. Jennifer O'Neill.
Hi, Peter. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. So I actually had two questions, but thankfully, Dr. McGuire emailed me the answer to one of them, so I won't be asking that. But this is just a question I have, and it may be better for one of the medical people. But if a student is vaccinated, will they be required to quarantine if they are contact traced?
Kelly, let's see.
Kelly's
Can you? Yeah, Kelly's here. Kelly, if you can raise your hand in the participant. Kelly,
I think this would be mostly for the high school students because I know the vaccine's 16 and up.
Okay. If you can just raise your hand. There we go.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Kelly.
Hi, Jen O'Neill.
Hi, Kelly.
So, so as far as if there is an exposure and there is a student or a staff member that is fully vaccinated or has had COVID within the past 90 days, they are not subject to the same quarantine rules.
Okay. All right. So then any student that's been vaccinated should let their school nurse know? Should they let you know? How should that
They
work?
should let their school nurse know, and it's important to note that they have to be fully vaccinated and be 14 days out from the
Yep.
vaccine.
All right, perfect. School opening will be perfect timing for the student in mind. Thank you so much.
Congratulations.
Glad we could satisfy that, Jen.
Of course, Peter. And I got my parking question answered. Thank you to Dr. McGuire.
All right, any other comments at this time? There is one other opportunity for public comment further on the agenda. Seeing none, do I have a motion by the school committee?
I have the blue sheet in front of me if you want me to read it.
Sure.
I move that the school committee vote to approve phase 3 of the Safe and Strong Return to School Framework as presented.
Motion by Ms. Lindblom. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Long. Any further discussion? All right, roll call vote. Ms. Brandolini,
Yes.
Mr. Hayes,
Yes.
Gates is a yes. Ms. Lindblom
Yes.
and Mr. Long.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously. Great, thanks. Great work, everybody. Thank you very much. Now we'll move along in the agenda. Under new business, the Assistant Superintendent Job Search Update, Superintendent Burkhead.
Thank you, Chairman Gates, and thank you, school committee, for your support in the reopening plan. And please know that it was a collaborative process. None of this could happen without every single person's involvement, including yours and your confidence in us to continue to go slow, to go fast, and go smart. So we'll do that. Next up, I want to first congratulate one of the hardest working people I know, Miss Jen Arnold. She's the Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment here for Scituate Public Schools, who recently announced her retirement. And she's been committed and dedicated to Scituate for 10 years, including her principalship at the GEMS. And I want to thank her personally, one of the first people I met coming here, and for all her time, dedication, and commitment to the students, staff, and families of Scituate. You will be missed, and we all wish you the best on your next endeavors. And that being said, we have to find a replacement for Jen. And I wanted to share with the community and the school committee tonight our process and timeline. I first want to say that because this is a central office position, and it will be the fourth, including the one that Jen's leading with Michelle Crawford as the DEI director, that we've brought on in 1 year. It's pretty impressive how a new team can be built. And so I think knowing the amount of work that it takes to go through such a process of such an important position, I've reached out to a consultant, Dr. Gary Maestas, to oversee the process and to work collaboratively with me on that. Dr. Maestas, if you Google him, was the longtime superintendent for the Plymouth Public Schools, my hometown. One of the best moves I tell him he ever made is he hired me as a teacher and a coach way back in the day in Plymouth, and became one of my mentors, and to this day still is, and one of the people I hold in the highest regard in education. He's one of the best of the best. So he started his own consultant firm, and lucky for us, he's available to help with the search. Not only he will be helping with the screening committee to navigate the process of interviews, but he's also out there with his reputation in 30 plus years in education, recruiting high quality candidates that he knows would be a good fit for Scituate. So we get a double bonus there. It's not simply that we're posting the job. We've got a professional out there that has credentials, basically headhunting for this, looking for great people, getting quality applicants in there, and overseeing this very important and thorough process. So I just want to share a quick screen and about he made this up for us, and it's been distributed. And, you know, I think also when candidates apply for these positions, they're interviewing us as well. We want them to want to be here and be attracted to Scituate as a destination for the best school district in the world, and helping us to continue to build that. So here's just a you know, a front and back of the flyer. Basically just some information on how to apply, his contact information. And then the part I wanted to talk about is the timeline. It gets a little bit into here. Thought this was important. The priorities that we have. These are these are from the job description that we picked out that our team believes are the highest priorities of this position. The qualifications obviously here, and then our core values, mission, and vision for the future. Here's the timeline squeezed in down here for our information tonight. And again, I think we've sent this up, but we'll be sending this out also to all our staff, and they have access to it. And it'll be available to anyone that wants it. The job has been posted since March 12th. The application submission deadline will be April 8th. The first round of interviews will be the following week at April 13th and 14th. And then the finalists will be chosen by that screening committee. And what we've had a tradition of doing for our central office positions that I think has worked very well is we'll invite the community in for a community interview. I think in a high pressure job like this, we want the candidates to be able to introduce themselves to our community and answer questions from all of our stakeholders, students, parents, family members, anybody that wants to attend in the community members to attend. So that's going to be, if you want to mark your calendar, will be the week of April 20th. I guess we'll have to get the specific date out there, but that's soon to be TBD. That week will be from 5 to 8 p.m. We're likely to have up to 3 candidates, an hour each, to have a very thorough, in-depth interview with them in the community. We also will provide the community an opportunity to provide feedback after those interviews, which will be used by me along with the feedback from the screening committee, all as information to help make the choice of the final candidate. Then the central office team will then interview the candidates on April 19th. That's April vacation week. And so we'll have time to do some thorough interviews with myself, Bonnie Donahue, Director of Human Resources, Dr. Bobert from Special Education, and Dr. Dutch. So we'll also have a very lengthy and detailed conversation following that, and that'll allow me to have one-on-ones with the finalists after that. So it'll be extremely thorough process. And then with the hope of April 22nd or 23rd, I'll be doing those. Then on April 26th, school committee meeting, I'm hoping to have a candidate ready for to announce on that evening. So that's kind of working backwards. April 26th. We've already started the process. So one last thing to mention, the membership of the screening committee will be released, but we asked for volunteers, and I won't go by the names tonight, but I'll just share with you the breakdown of who's in part of that, a representative group from our school community. There'll be 13 people. We've got two educators, 2 students, 3 parents, 2 principals, 1 school committee member. Thank you, Ms. Brandolini, for volunteering for that. 1 community member, 1 assistant principal, our Medco director. That's it. That's 13 people. So that'll be our committee makeup for that process. I'll take any questions you might have about that.
I don't have any questions, Superintendent Burke, but I just wanted to also congratulate and thank Ms. Arnold on the time in the district. I had the pleasure of working with her, I guess. Yeah, working with her collaboratively over the last 4 years. A lot of items that we tackled and resolved, and I thank you for your efforts and your time, and wish you well moving on. So thank you. Other than that, so thank you, Ms. Brandolini, for agreeing to participate. I know that we needed at least one representative, so thanks. I know it takes additional time, but you're the best one for it right now. Thank you. And we anxiously await the finalists. And so the school committee in its entirety, so the search committee will just find the 3 finalists, and then Superintendent Burkett, you'll make the final decision, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
And I guess just to reiterate that, part of the criteria when we move those up to 3, it's up to 3 people, I guess, it could be 2, is that the question we often ask in those committees is, you know, and typically if you get the right person, the overwhelming, if not unanimous decision is to move those people forward. The question is, now, are you comfortable that this person could be our next assistant superintendent? And the answer has to be yes. So even if you have a first choice and a second choice, anybody you move forward with, that group needs to be collectively based on all the information from feedback from the forums, from their interviewing, from their looking over those candidates, has to be in that column. So when they come to me, and keep in mind, central office is also involved in this. That's an added thing that we hadn't have in the other 2 positions because we hadn't met a team yet. I'm going to get their input too from Dr. Dutch, Dr. Bobert, and Ms. Donahue. Just another layer of really intense and detailed interview. And then I'll have some time alone with each of the candidates after all of that information and their feedback and support. So it's a pretty thorough and gruesome process. I guess I shouldn't say gruesome. I guess it might be a better word to use, but those finalists will have earned it that make it to the final round.
Okay, great. I know we've had a lot of candidates, a lot of different positions to fill over the last year. And I know that Ms. Arnold was integral in helping with those. So filling this one will just be a little bit different perspective, but I think we all now understand it to some degree, I think. But yeah, well,
and the goal is to find someone as popular as Dr. Dutch.
All right. Sounds good. All right. Any other questions or comments for Superintendent Burkhead on the assistant super? Okay. To the next athletic director job search update.
Yes, I'd like to update you. So we have an open athletic director position for the fall. We have updated the job description and really tailored it to the position that we have here in Scituate and the needs that are unique to Scituate. So I think that it reads as a, for those who are in district, the position that we have and the needs that we have unique to our district are captured in that. The position went public on March 15th, and we're soliciting candidates through April 15th. We'll review those over the break and have first round committee interviews the week after, April 26th to 28th. That committee is made up of myself, our middle school principal, Mr. Beatty, one of the high school assistant principals, the athletic administrative assistant, 3 coaches, 1 from each season, 2 parents who are boosters, and 2 junior student athletes. And I believe they are each 3 season athletes. The second round of interviews will take place the 29th and 30th of April. That's an opportunity similar to the assistant superintendent position with the central office to really allow the assistant principals and I to meet with the candidates who are moved forward to that round and have conversations about leadership, about this is an administrative role and we're looking for someone to fulfill those duties at that high level and represent Scituate out in athletic meetings with our students and our accountability as far as chemical health and academic requirements and the leadership opportunities that our athletes are able to achieve through our development programs for students on our teams. Following that, we'll move names forward to Superintendent Burkhead. He will conduct interviews of the finalists, reference checks will be conducted, and we hope to have an announcement the week of May 12th. Captains, student leader captains, athletes. That's what I was looking for.
Great, thank you. Any comments or questions by the committee? All right, we'll look forward to hearing more as we get to the finalists.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. Next item, which is always exciting, is our policy review. This is our first reading. We have 3 policies which we will be reviewing. I can hand it over to Superintendent Arnold or Mike or Janice. I'm not quite sure. Ms. Arnold.
Can I have hosting abilities so I can show the policies unless you'd
Yeah,
rather?
you can right now. You can right
Okay.
now. As a co-host, you should be able to.
Ms. Arnold, you do. Yes, you go right
Okay.
ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Gates, and on behalf of School Committee Member Mike Long and School Committee Member Nicole Brandolini, I will present the policies we worked on and just the parts that we updated or changed. So I will share the first one, which is FFA memorials, with you right now. So basically this one is, we did away with everything in our old FFA memorials. We just obliterated the whole thing. And this is the new language here. The language is directly from the mask policy on memorials. And so we determined as a subcommittee that this would be the language to put forward. We all agreed. Before, the old one said, was focused more on, you know, how grief experts say that you shouldn't have any kind of permanent memorial to anyone who has passed away because it's not a good practice. It's not supportive of everybody's mental health. And so this was written by Mask, and we just thought it was appropriate to do this one.
All right. Any comments? Sorry, Ms. Lindblom and Mr. Long were on our policy subcommittee review, correct?
Yes. Why did I say Ms. Brandolini? I apologize. Ms. Lindblom and Mr. Long. Yes.
Yeah, the only other thing I'd add coming out of that meeting is the third sentence, and it says that the school committee is solely responsible for approving memorials inside the school building or on the outer walls. So there's a lot of back and forth with town hall on who's responsible for memorials and where. So it's just clarified that, you know, from our policy perspective, we're covering everything inside the buildings, or there was concern that we didn't want someone to have control of what was from the outer walls of the school. So we added in or on the outer walls, but obviously as we go through changes with town hall, if we need to, we can amend that line. But the goal here was to just say since the school committee has sole responsibility for the buildings themselves and not the outside area of the school yards, we just wanted to clarify that in the policy.
Mr. Long, I think that's great, and I fully agree with it. And I don't want to complicate this more, but I think we all understand the complexity to this particular policy is how much control do we have on school grounds. So do you guys, or did you discuss, is there any reason to add a sentence that says something to the effect of this, you know, something to the fact that the school committee does not, I don't know what the right word, I think we're always struggling for, but the school committee does not have control or whatnot to to approve any policies outside of the building, something like that. I don't really know if we need to state something to the negative in a policy, but just something to mention.
So I think we did talk about that, but the language here, where it says solely the committee is solely responsible for approving memorials inside the school building and or on the outer walls, we felt that was clear. But
Okay.
you know, now that you're mentioning it, I'm not sure how anyone else feels about that.
But I believe that the town is also working on their memorial policy. So perhaps, I'm not sure the timing of it, but perhaps if, generally we have 2 or 3 readings on these policies. So perhaps before the second policy read on this, we might have their policy, and that way we can look at it and maybe they define what they control and what they don't.
Well, the word solely also just says that, the town can't say we're going to put a memorial inside the school somewhere. We own the buildings, therefore we own anything that can go inside of them. If they come back and say it's an agreement between the school committee and the town on a field or something like that, I mean, that's more of a joint responsibility. I'm taking a very little approach with the word solely, but when they figure out their policy, we can make sure we're in line with it or add a sentence here if we need to. I don't know when they're going to be done, but I don't want to hold this up while town hall is doing their thing.
Yeah. We have that monthly meeting. We have a follow-up meeting on March 30th. So I'll ask, which will be before our next school committee meeting. So I'll ask for an update and see if they have a policy status on this.
We also added, that the next line, the permanent memorials within the school wall should be limited in form to perpetual awards of scholarships.
Yes.
So, which I think kind of addresses other issues, other memorials that we've been asked about.
I like everything about the policy. What I'm trying to prevent is a situation that we just had where someone comes to us and wants to put in a bench only to find out that, there's lots of other details that go along with that. So I'm not sure if this policy right now, as it's rewritten, if a family were to call us again, could we say, here's our policy? That's not under our purview. And I'm not sure that the policy does that, but I'm not sure if it needs to either. That's, again, the same kind of stuff we've talked about for a while. I like this as it reads. I think it definitely is better than the last one for sure.
Yeah, it's a lot better than the last one. I like it. I guess you're right though. I don't know what their policy how theirs will read, but I thought they wanted to do more joint, like Mike was mentioning, for fields. I mean, I think it's more like we want to collaborate, so theirs will probably be inclusive of us, but
yeah, so maybe if there is, we can say for anything outside of the walls, please note town policy, whatever, on memorial, something like that, just so it gives us something to go back to a family that wants to do something nice. Like I think that we want to be able to have a quick response and be able to get back to them so that we know exactly which direction to point them. That's all.
Yeah.
I like everything about this. I think I'm just stuck on that. What do we do in the case of someone comes to us and that wants to rename a field or wants to put up a bench or a sign? This policy doesn't necessarily tell us what to do with that. But
right, because it seems like that's the more likely scenario, is that it is more likely something like an exterior building and grounds type memorial than anyone asking to do something inside the building. I mean, you never know, but the last several have been outside.
Yeah, so I'll get an update. I believe it's on it will be on I'll put on the agenda for the my next meeting with the select board, and then we'll kind of dovetail that with this to see if it addresses my concern anyways, and anyone else's.
Do you want me to add that language, or would you rather wait?
I would just wait for now, Jen. Just again, I don't want to make this more complicated than it needs to be, but I think that one of the reasons for our redrafting of this policy was simply so that we had a definitive answer to questions such as, can we put a bench on a football field? And I'm not sure this necessarily does or doesn't. I'm not quite sure yet. But yeah, I would just hold off for now and let me see if I can get. They may not have anything going, in which case we can just adopt, vote this policy as it is.
Okay.
I mean, it's always been an issue, about, outside the buildings.
Yeah.
It's, we use them, but we don't maintain them. They are the property of the town. So any memorial that would go out there would be, have to be.
So we could add that.
Yeah.
Any memorial outside of the walls needs to go before the town, like something like that. That could solve this nuance.
Yeah.
Why don't you see what their plan is, Peter? I don't know if this has been on their agenda recently, but even if they have a general idea of where they're leaning, we can address this and not adopt this policy, then change it and change it again because they changed their policy.
Right. Yeah, no, I'll get a status. Again, we do have a meeting on the 30th, and I don't anticipate that they have made much progress, but I will ask, and then I will inform the committee of anything that's in process. But again, I like everything about this. I like the wording. I think it's great. Again, I just want to address that one issue. That's all.
My only comment, Pete, if I may, is
Sure.
that the sentence regarding memorials inside the buildings is a change in our policy that I'm not sure I agree with. As far as no further inside memorials would be allowed other than, through scholarships or whatever. I mean, the two most recent that have been inside our school buildings was the photograph of Scituate's first art teacher with a lovely plaque outside the art department at the high school. The years ago, the former school committee member Carol Lane had the science wing of the middle school named with a very simple plaque. So I would frankly not be in favor of those types of memorials being outlawed.
Okay.
But again, this is the first reading.
Yep.
So
looks like we'll probably have 3 readings on this one.
Yeah.
But do you read it that way? Mike, do you read it that way? Because I think those are great examples of how, of good reasons to have a policy on memorials that would impact the inner walls of the school. So as I feel like with this, the way it's written, and, Mike and Janice and Jen, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but so when it says the school committee is solely responsible for approving memorials inside the school buildings, so we could still have things like that per our approval. It doesn't say we can't.
Well, yeah, I'm looking at that second to last paragraph.
The next sentence does.
Because I think, memorializing, the first art teacher and things like that, those are all great things.
Yeah, but see that.
So I agree.
Second to last sentence in the policy, at least to my reading, would prohibit that.
Yeah.
And that's
well,
my
I think
that's my
that's
concern.
something to fix if both of us are interpreting it differently.
Yeah. So that's my concern.
Because I agree. I think those are good ways to memorialize inside our walls.
Sure.
And I wouldn't want us to not do those things or not have the option to do those things.
The option to do it, exactly.
Yeah.
My only other comment would be that I think we do need to collaborate with the selectmen on the mechanism for outside on the grounds, and I'm sure they're more than happy to and will collaborate with us whenever these requests are made. So that's
Mike, are you proposing just striking that sentence, permanent memorials within the school should be limited to these things?
I would, frankly, yes.
Well, I don't think we need to strike it. I mean, we could tweak it,
Yeah. But is this right out of Basque?
Yes.
Yeah, I think maybe reworking it that would potentially, again, we're we're trying to create a policy so that it's cut and dry on what, on what we can and can't do. So I don't know. I tend to agree that it would be nice to be able to continue to do those types of things that we've done, but does that mean that it was right to do in the past? I don't know.
Yeah, it was approved, so.
Yeah, I know. Per the
By
policy.
definition, it was right.
True. So yeah, I don't know. I would like to allow. I guess I would like to allow some ability to continue those, but I recognize the difficulty in this policy.
If we want to tweak it or eliminate that sentence, let's see what we can come up with over the next few readings. Sure.
That's fair. All right. Little did we know that we would be spending so much time on memorial policy.
This is our favorite policy.
This is our third meeting discussing memorials.
We can always suspend it and then vote on one and then reinstate.
Yeah, that's true.
That's always fun.
All right. Next policy.
Next is the teaching about controversial subjects, issues, and controversial issues, and having controversial speakers. Whoops, get that out. Right there. So this one does not change at all. The only thing that we changed in this is the line in the, I'm sorry, no. We added that any of the inclusion in the curriculum of controversial issues must be aligned to the Massachusetts framework. So in number 1, controversial issues selected by teachers for classroom discussion must relate directly to the objectives and content of courses approved by the school committee for inclusion in the curriculum and align with the Massachusetts curriculum frameworks. That's the only thing we changed in that one.
All right. Any? I guess I have just a quick question. I know why we were reviewing memorials and public comment. I'm just curious why we chose to look at this one. I'm just curious.
I don't know.
Okay.
I might be able to add some insight, Chairman Gates.
Okay.
I think there was just a few months back when there was a heightened sense in the country and in the town, there was a lot of questioning about the curriculum and what we were teaching and, how do we vet what we teach? And it was, I thought it was important for us to review this, but also to share with people tonight publicly that we do have a policy for it and that we are careful about what we teach our children and that we abide by this policy. So I think a lot of it came from that. So when the idea to come up, look at the other 2 policies, thought it might be a good idea just to kind of review this and make sure that we're in agreement still with it and that we follow it. In adding the curriculum frameworks, also to let the community know that what we teach is aligned with the Mass State frameworks. And so just to emphasize that point.
Okay. No, I think it's great that that we did review and that we didn't really have to make any real changes to it. My only comment would be, obviously, this is a policy that is directly related to our teachers. So as long as the teachers are aware of this particular policy, which every indication is they are, I would just be sure that they are aware of it. That's all.
And if I could just say the teachers are aware of this and they do an amazing job making sure that they inform their students and parents when there's anything that could be potentially controversial coming up. They've really stepped up in the work that they invest in making sure that everybody knows that they have transparent curriculum. They've done a great job on it.
Great. Any other comments? All right. That one was a lot easier.
Okay, now comes the tough one.
Yep.
Let me just pull it up. So I'd like to pull up the red line and the, I'll just pull up the final one. Okay, so this one is the public comment. This had the most revision. We relied on our district council to help us with this opening paragraph and some of the other particulars in the policy. This first paragraph is, the spirit of it is the same, but it's more specific about policies for the public comment during the school committee meeting. We took out some language that didn't really seem relevant at the time, or the attorney had. So this is the new paragraph, intro paragraph, with her recommendations. One of the things that's different here is the public comment sessions will be 3 minutes and not 5. We added these policy for cross-referencing these other policies. The other thing is that, let's see, limit the types of meetings or topics for which public comment is allowed. That's at the chair's discretion, and as is an option. And then we've outlined just procedures, which is unusual in a policy generally, but the procedures about exactly the protocol for how public can share at a meeting, can comment rather at a meeting. So again, speakers will be allowed 3 minutes to present their material. Topics for discussion must be limited to those items listed on the school committee agenda for that evening, unless approved by the chair. That's a new statement there. We changed the wording on this part about improper conduct. We specified what improper conduct would be. Defamatory, improper, abusive remarks are always out of order. And then what will happen if that continues by a member of the public, if they continue that conduct, the chair can terminate that individual's privilege of address. And the remarks, again, further defining remarks that have been adjudicated defamatory. So, you know, by courts, they've said this is defamatory language. And those are the kinds of things we call abusive, obscenities, vulgarities, threats, and fighting words or remarks. Anything likely to provoke a violent reaction. And as always, all remarks must be addressed through the chairperson of the committee. Speakers may offer comments and criticism of the school operations and programs as concern them and which are within the school committee's scope of responsibility. But in public session, the committee will not hear personal complaints of school personnel nor against any member of the school community which are outside the scope of the school committee's responsibility. Votes will not be taken, of course. That doesn't change. Responses to concerns will be made only by superintendent or chair or other members at the chair's discretion. And on those issues that can be resolved by directing citizens to the appropriate staff, the superintendent or chair will advise the citizens of appropriate steps to take. There's no real change to the news media. There is no change. The audio taping is changed in that we added this last part after notifying the chair. So members of the general public may tape or record all regular and special meetings of the school committee after notifying the chair. Curriculum presentation didn't change. Student advisory annual budget hearing didn't change. So other than this change about audio taping, all changes are in the intro paragraph and then a few of the well, several of these items under the procedure.
Okay, thank you. I just, thank you for doing this. I just want to remind the committee, I guess, of why we're reviewing this particular policy. Obviously, the past year has been very stressful, and we've had some particular meetings where folks felt uncomfortable. And actually, at one, I was asked to review, in theory, asked to review our policy on public comments. That's what led us to this particular point. Ultimately, after reviewing the old policy and looking at this one, it actually allows for, I guess, more access to public comment in theory, meaning our old policy really only allowed public comment on agenda items. And as Ms. Arnold indicated here, and one of the important features here is that technically that's not right. We need to allow them to make, or the public can make comments really on anything that's under our purview as spoken, as written there. To me, that was probably one of the biggest changes that I saw. But in reality, we always took public comment on really anything anyways, but we were kind of out of order because it was against our policy. Other than that, it looks good. I just have one question on item 6. It said votes will not be taken. What is that in reference to?
Anything that's discussed during the public comment session, like if for any reason you think it's a decision you have to make there about something someone brought up, that is the way I interpret it. We didn't have a discussion on that, but that's how I interpret it. So if someone were to bring something up that you feel requires a discussion and perhaps that would require that you take some kind of action, that action should not be a vote.
Okay.
Yeah, like if some parent said, I think we should change the school colors to green.
Yeah.
And school committee couldn't vote that,
Okay, got it. Any other? I think this is a big policy, and especially, I think now that we're remote and we have much more participation than we ever had in person, I think that this policy is really, at the forefront. And, realistically, whoever the chair is, this is a policy for them. And I will admit, as a chair, it's difficult to enforce all of these. It just is. I guess in theory, it's easier because I can just hit the mute button when someone says something that that goes against our policies, but it's difficult to do that, I'll admit. But again, this item kind of, it doesn't limit free speech at all. Just because we don't like what someone's saying doesn't mean we can stop them from saying it. So I think this is an important policy for the school committee to be aware of, as well as all those that attend our meetings. Are there any comments by the school committee?
I'll just add that, as we reviewed this policy, we had gotten that letter from our legal counsel just providing language and their opinion on this, which we just took verbatim and put into the policy so that we were, following all legal precedent that we need to follow. I know Mr. Hayes brought up a comment about in the past about having town council also look at this. I don't know if it's something we need to do or should do, since it, we're going off of the legal counsel that we have, but I mean, that's something we could discuss. I don't know if this is going to be any different from what members, boards of the town have, but I mean, this particularly covers us from a school committee perspective.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. And I mean, my only concern with it is, as we all know, as school committee people, we enjoy limited liability. If we do something wrong and someone wants to sue us, the town will step in with a statutory limit on liability. But the issue is if we've requested attorney's legal opinion, and we don't follow it, then we're open to unlimited personal liability. So my only thought in talking with Mike was that, I think someone needs to review this. If this is the final drafts, in my opinion, we should have, whether it's the school committee's attorney or town council or somebody or both, just review it so that there would be no possibility that we're going against council's opinion and open ourselves up to personal liability.
Yeah, I guess I could. I don't know at what point, Mike, do you think that I'd submit this draft to our, I don't think we need to get the town side involved because that would pretend. You can go back
Mike
to
and I had that discussion, and I think our council is sufficient.
Okay.
Certainly.
So I guess after, well.
Before we vote it.
Before we vote it, yeah.
And then
Yeah, so I'll just have it go, we'll have to coordinate and send it to our council just to make sure that they agree with this.
Right.
The only thing I would say on that is, I know Mr. Long and I talked a little bit about item number 2, potentially getting rid of it. I don't know if it's contradictory or not, but it says topics for discussion must be limited to those items listed on the school committee agenda for that evening unless approved. But then on item number 5, it says that, basically they can speak about anything under our purview. So I don't know if that's contradictory, if we could remove item 2 or what. I personally don't necessarily think we need it there. I think item 5 takes care of that.
Well, Peter, if you look at the wording, like number 2, it says topics for discussion, whereas in 5, it's a comment. Somebody could comment, just make a general comment about how we're, operating.
Oh, okay, I see. Topics for discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Topics for, but this is in regards to public comment. So how does topics for discussion correlate to public comment?
Good question.
Well, if somebody has a question about a presentation, they ask a question and then sometimes is a little back and forth just to clarify something, to clarify a point.
Okay.
That's,
I see that perspective. I wasn't thinking from that perspective, but I see it.
That's how I read it.
Well, we can have Bill or Jen, since they're on the subcommittee, reach out to our lawyer and then ask them if there's any difference between 2 and 5.
Sure, I'd be happy to do that, and I can. I'll clean up this draft because I saw a couple of typos. So I'll clean this draft up and I will send them off to the attorney and wait. I'll ask her about 2 and 5 and then her other general opinion about it.
Okay.
Okay.
And Jen, if you could, would you also ask our attorney, is that by having them review it for us, does that meet the requirements of the liability statute in Massachusetts?
Okay, I will do. Thank you.
Yeah, I think this is an important policy. It really hits on a lot of topics. I think that as a committee over the years, we've done a really good job with it, but I think it's helpful just to review this and just to bring it up to date a little bit. So thank you for the work on this. It's more exciting than memorials, I think. But I would agree with Mr. Hayes. I wouldn't necessarily think to go back to do it. I think it makes a lot of sense, specifically if it's going to minimize our individual liability. So it's reasonable. All right, so we'll have a second and/or third reading on this as well, unless there are any other comments right now. All right. Thank you very much. Now moving on to item 7, old business, the 2021-2022 school calendar. Second reading.
Great, thank you, Chairman Gates. Just wanted to share with you all, and I know you have a copy of this, the draft document that was shared last time. I did some homework. I know there was concern with Labor Day being late on the 6th. if there was a potential to start school before Labor Day. And as you can see from on the right of the August-September month, there's a lot we do with our staff that prior week. There's also a contractual agreement on the Friday before Labor Day, which in this case is September 3rd, is a day off. So we've got 4 days to do 4 days of work with our teachers, which includes new teacher orientation and professional development for 3 days. If we were to push even just to go back for 1 day to start before that, and I don't know why we'd just go back for 1 day, but if we did, we would push every day we would want for school to start before the 7th, would push our work with our teachers back into the 3rd week of August, which is not something I'd recommend. I don't know any of the district that does that early. And that's also would violate the contract at this point, would have to be renegotiated. So I'm comfortable recommending to you to start after Labor Day, because if you look at the last day of school, it's the 17th is the 180th day. That's the same day as this year. It's not an uncommon date. It's not the earliest day, but again, it's not, it still allows for 5 potential bad weather days or cancellations, and you're still 2, 3, 4, you still got 3 more days after that. So you'd need 9 snow days that year to start, looking at other options to make up those days on your 10th one. So again, a lot would have to go wrong for this to be a problem. So I don't foresee that. So I'm comfortable recommending that in my research. The other thing I think you asked me to look at was Good Friday. Most surrounding schools, if not all, had the day off. 3 schools, Duxbury, Marshfield, and Plymouth, put the name Good Friday on the calendar as we have it in this draft. I think the one we have this year doesn't have Good Friday on there, just has it as a day off. So that's something for you all to discuss. And Hingham Public Schools don't label any of their holidays. They put an H for holiday consistently throughout. So those are how some other schools are doing it. We weren't able to find a final approval for any of the calendars for Norwell, Cohasset, Hanover. So I'll answer any other questions you might have on that draft calendar.
I think the point I was trying to make about the Good Friday was that it's basically like a Catholic holiday, but there aren't any other holidays throughout the year that we have off that are major holidays for other religions. And I think last year we didn't start, I think Rosh Hashanah, we did not have school. That was the beginning of the school year. That would have been our first day, if I remember correctly. And isn't it again this year?
I don't think it would have been last year, Janice. It would be rare they would be the same date. It's a floating holiday.
Oh, I thought we delayed school starting. Well, I think it was moved because everything was off.
20.
I think there was 1 year, Janice, that did occur, and
I think it would have been.
No, it was a weekend in 2020.
All right, so maybe it was the year before.
yeah, it was in the last few years, I think it did come up and we changed
Mhm.
so that it
Right.
wasn't cool.
So, yeah, I mean, I agree. We just changed the Good Friday naming for this particular calendar, correct? I personally don't think that we should name it Good Friday. To Janice's point, we're not naming any other holidays.
But so why do we have it off?
Well, this goes back to what Mr. Hayes said. It's more of a staffing issue. I think that,
But no, but I'm saying like if you're not going to name the day that we're having off, like we have it off because it's Good Friday, not naming it isn't going to change why we have it off. Like, so,
but it brings in the discussion of what other holidays, religious holidays should we have off and name. So that's my concern.
Right. If just because we have the day off and not name it doesn't kind of do away with the concern that it's a holiday.
I think, and Mr. Hayes, sorry for speaking for you, but I think that you brought up the point that whether we call it Good Friday or not, we most likely wouldn't be able to staff our school on that particular day. And something to that degree. So whether we call it Good Friday or not, we most likely, have a majority of our staff who will be observing it.
And students.
So I think that, I mean, does it, not that we have to decide it for this calendar, but I mean, is it something worth looking into? Would that really be an issue?
If what, if we had school?
No, if we had staff, if we held school on Good Friday. Would we have, I don't know. I mean, I know this is a huge can of worms, but in every year we have this discussion. It's just,
I don't really remember having this discussion before, but in 40 years, but it's
yeah,
always worthwhile. Talk
No,
about.
I think, yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's just a fine line, because if we're naming one holiday and observing it, then we have to be careful about naming and observing other holidays. That's all.
right. So is there another holiday for another religion that we have off? We just don't name it. Like, I think it's not named, just because we don't put Good Friday on that day doesn't mean it's not a religious holiday.
Well, you have the issue this year. If we start on the 7th, it's Rosh Hashanah. So you'd have to say Rosh Hashanah.
Right.
And then how do you limit it to just Rosh Hashanah? What about Yom Kippur? Or what about all the other holidays?
Therein lies the problem.
Yes.
Right. I don't know the answer. I just, I just try to be more inclusive. It's hard.
So I know we could talk about all that. I agree. We want to be more inclusive, but if we are more inclusive, we're going to have a lot of days off.
That's true.
So I think it's a difficult one. I mean, it's a difficult discussion. I probably thought about it and talked about it for 3 hours today. And there's no, there's so many different directions to go. So I'll open up the rest of the committee for any comments or thoughts they have. But what we're voting today is the basically the first day of school and the last day of school, correct?
Can you repeat that? Is that a question for me, Chairman Gates?
Yeah, so we're basically voting I know we're voting the first page, which we don't have the times and stuff, but we're voting the first day of school and really the last day of school is what this vote would entail, correct?
Well, yeah, and all the days off, and you've got Columbus Day that's on there. You've got Veterans Day. Thanksgiving break is traditional. All of these are from brought over from last year, so there's no change in any of them.
Well, I think we all know that, the 7th is Rosh Hashanah. If we have a lot of people out the first day of school, that presents,
But all right, so I
think
could talk.
the issue is that it's the first day of school. I mean,
right.
Right. So
it's not.
So I agree, and again, I observe Rosh Hashanah. I agree. The problem is that gets us into a predicament of what happens next year on Rosh Hashanah, because it's the second day of school. We're not going to observe it. It's very tricky. I don't think we can define when we can observe a holiday or when we can observe it in the school calendar. I think it's a difficult one.
But we are observing Good Friday. I'm just being
Right, but we don't have to observe Good Friday, and then we potentially don't have the staff to come to work. I don't think if we have school on Rosh Hashanah, the majority of our staff is not going to come in.
Yeah.
And I get it. I miss school. I miss school, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur every year, probably through middle school. It's not fun. And the fact that it is the first day of school is more impactful. My concern is simply that if we choose to observe it this year or the next school year, and then next year, I think it's in like the end of September, we're not going to observe it because it's not the first day. That's my challenge.
Right. I know what you're saying.
Right. But it's unique that that's this coming school year, that it happens to fall on the first day of school. I think it's the fact that like those 2 days together it's an important first day back at school after a year of, what everybody's been through. Will it be disruptive for some kids that won't be there?
I don't disagree. I just think it's setting a dangerous precedent. That's all. And, it's up to the committee
Well,
to
I
determine.
think that we've mentioned many times that one of the tasks for our new DEI director and his or their team would be looking at the entire calendar from, a completely a broader perspective in general. And like, I mean, I know we're talking about Rosh Hashanah, but the fact that we still have Columbus Day labeled on there is like glaring out at me with disgust. So, I mean, there's so many issues with it, I think. So I don't know. To me, like, if it's something that we're spending this much time on and we've received emails about, and it's, it is, like Janice said, uniquely the first day of school, I mean, if we start on the 8th instead of the 7th, it's one day. I mean, if I were in charge of all of this, I would just make June, whatever it is, I can't even see it, like 20th, a remote day, and call it that, make up the day somehow. We have to be creative.
I mean, if you don't want to make, set precedents, we had voted before not to have the first day of school when on the same day that it landed on Rosh Hashanah.
When was that, Janice?
I don't know.
I don't think that ever happened.
I don't think that in 9 years, Janice, I haven't seen us ever not start on the
Never
Tuesday
happened.
after Labor Day.
That would have been historic if we did that. No way, it didn't.
I thought we did too, Janice, but
All right, thank you, Mike.
I was looking at the minutes of the school committee meetings that we're going to vote in a minute, and I said, geez, where was I on the 13th? I didn't realize I wasn't here. So,
yeah.
So again, there's no easy answer, and there's no right or wrong answer.
Yeah.
It's just, again, for me, it's a precedent. And if we want to set the precedent and say, all right, we're going to observe Rosh Hashanah, then we got to observe it every year. I really think that. With that being said, the holiest of holidays in the Jewish calendar is not Rosh Hashanah, it's Yom Kippur. So how do we choose which ones to observe? And again, that's my challenge. It really is. And so what do we say? We put a policy in place. If the first day of school falls on a religious holiday, we're not going to have it. And maybe we do.
I mean, also, I get your point about setting the precedence, but it doesn't have to be a precedence.
No, it can be a one-off.
Because we look at this every year anyway.
Right.
I think it does set a precedent. I think it does. And it's not the wrong one. It's not necessarily a wrong one. I just think that you have to be consistent. But I guess you could say if a major holiday falls on the first day of school, then we do it one day later. I think the challenge here is that Labor Day is late, just like it was this past year.
Yeah.
If it wasn't as late, we wouldn't have the issue. So your
Right.
policy could be if Labor Day is the 6th or 7th of the year and your holiday falls on that Tuesday, then don't have school. But it's up to the committee. I think that it goes back to Superintendent Burkhead, I think, of if we do that, to this whole calendar just adjusts one day to the one day longer. And that's a risk that we would have to take. I do think it makes a statement by saying, hey, we're not going to have the first day of school on Rosh Hashanah. I think more than anything, it gets the population of our district talking about, hey, why don't we have school? So at least it gets a discussion going, which is recognition of other holidays or other religions, which I think is good.
I agree with you, Pete.
So I think I'd be remiss if I was just reminded, and I think Mike and I were half correct, that we weren't going to have school because it was the primary.
It's a little bit different than Rosh Hashanah.
But we had the discussion, I think.
We did have a discussion, yeah.
But Pete, I'd certainly support your thought of having that the first day of school should not be a religious holiday.
I can be convinced. It's a committee vote.
I agree.
It's a committee vote. I'll support whatever the committee has. I have dual perspectives. And I think that I'm probably being a little bit more outspoken just because I am one that it would affect directly.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily have a problem with the first day because I don't want it to become an issue where every year, why are we not having Rosh Hashanah off?
So Pete, so just for perspective, a friend of mine sent me information that, so Rosh Hashanah isn't going to fall within the first potential week of school for the next 10 years. So this is the earliest date in the next decade.
So does that mean that we not recognize it?
No, it's just not going to be like a yearly issue of coincidence that the first day of school.
And
also
technically,
falls
actually, I
on
have to say this.
holiday.
Mr. Long educated me on this. I wasn't even aware of this, but Rosh Hashanah is technically 2 days. So does that mean we need Tuesday and Wednesday off? I never knew it was. I thought it was only 1 day.
Well, I guess we should just make the next school year fully virtual then, and we can all stay home. No, I'm totally kidding.
I mean, every year we debate whether or not to go back before Labor Day or go after Labor Day. I'd be all in for going before because some years it just doesn't, it calls for it, but but I think just this coming year is just unique that the first day of school is a major religious holiday this coming year. And we can address it again next year. And it's a different year, different calendar.
And what happens if we do get 5 snow days next year? We're going to get out the last week in June. And then we're going to hear people concerned that we're going to school so late.
If we get the snow days after a certain date, we don't have to make them up, right?
I can be convinced of either. You have to look at the end of the calendar. Aside from the religious aspect, I mean, we're trying to build in a certain number of days into the calendar. And if you look at it, I mean, it's a pretty good chance they're going to be going to school until the last week in June.
That's life, pal.
Yeah, first time. And
wouldn't be the
honestly,
first time.
Exactly.
Right. And if we get like 5 or 6 snow days in a row, that'll probably be a state of emergency and we don't have to make them up.
Right.
Only 1 day. I think it's the right thing to do.
1 day. Oh.
Superintendent Burkett, what any comments on delaying that by a day?
No, I support that. I think, this year we've looked at the, our district in a lens of diversity and inclusion. And, I don't think you're boxing yourself into a corner by saying for this year, even the statement of if there's a major religious holiday on the first day of school, I don't know if that's going to happen too often. I doubt it. But I think that's just a respectful thing. And I don't know who said it, but then people will be talking about, well, why aren't we going back on the 7th? And I think I'd be proud of our district talking about, that holiday and why it's important and why we celebrate it. And I still think we get enough days on the back end to have the 5 days of snow and actually 7 days still. So I think it wouldn't impact the schedule much. And I think it sends a positive message that we're supporting all of our families in their celebrations.
All right. No, I think it will be monumental and historic that Scituate does not have school on Rosh Hashanah. I think it's a great story.
So
I really do. I do. I don't know why I spoke out against it. It wasn't really against it. I didn't want to have another situation with another religious holiday, whatever religion it was, with a similar situation and have to go differently. So I think it's great. I think it's something that, again, as I mentioned, Superintendent Burke, I just mentioned, families will actually be talking about Rosh Hashanah in Scituate. And I don't necessarily think that has really happened in the past. So I think it's great.
So Pete, one of the things that when you and I had a lot of text going back and forth after last meeting about, this potential issue. And I think one thing we need to be careful of, we're not taking the 7th off specifically because of Rosh Hashanah. We're just moving the first day of school off by a day. I think there is some I want to make sure from a legal perspective, we don't get in trouble for turning around and, taking religious holidays off, because I don't think we can as a public school. But I would be really concerned about, I'm all for taking Rosh Hashanah off, moving the date off, but I think we just need to be careful of, what we're calling, we're just saying that we're starting school a day later.
Well, maybe this year the best alternative would be to move the first day of school to a day later and have that be another question that Jen asks our council.
If we're not supposed to take good religious holidays off, then we would be having school on Good Friday. I mean, that's my argument.
I think what I found, and this was some legal document from, I think, the New York Law Review, and I'm going to preface this by saying I didn't do any type of emotional research into this. It was just something I found after talking to Peter. It said that Good Friday is actually considered a secular holiday. So, and I think there were 12 states that actually have in their state laws that Good Friday is considered a holiday in general for different reasons outside of the fact that it's Good Friday, even though it's always Good Friday. So,
like evacuation day.
Something like that, but because it's considered secular, and because of some of the things that Mike Hayes had mentioned about, we just wouldn't have people coming to school, and that's part of the reasoning behind it. That we just, that's one of the reasons that it's always been a day off, and I think it's a great conversation for our DEI coordinator in the future in terms of should we have Good Friday off or not, and what's the best approach from an inclusive perspective. And in the past, and this is something I was actually going to bring up separately, but in the past, because of those years where we had major snowstorms, we actually qualified a couple of days in the calendar that if we hit too many snow days, we would actually go to school on either these Saturdays or, we would go to school on certain days later in the calendar. And one of the ones we gave up quickly was Good Friday.
Right.
Said we would go to school Good Friday, but we wouldn't extend the school year. So, there's precedent there in the calendars we've approved in the past to say, we could still have school on that day, but really only because of a horrible winter where we have a lot of snow days, and we don't want to be going to the end of.
Right. And the other thing,
by June 30th, so we can't, go beyond that.
Yeah. The other thing, Mr. Long, is I know that Scituate was out in front a couple of years ago with the testing of the blizzard bags, which got shut down. I'm not sure if it was DESI or some other state organization.
Yeah, the state shut it down, which would have made it amazing for last year and parts of this year. But, the state shut it down. We were on board with it. It was the state that said, you can't do it.
Make too much sense for Desi.
Sorry, you lose me?
Nope.
So I think
Desi said no, it was the state that shut it down. We actually had a policy in place that would have supported it.
Yeah, so I don't know if the state will be potentially revisiting that, because if they did, then it would allow us to, theoretically potentially not lose a day to snow potentially, if we still had power. So that's another reason that we could find a day here and there potentially. So, all right, I think we talked about enough. As long as we can fit in the appropriate number of days. And is Mr. Arnold checking with our attorney to see if we're able to, or what do we call that day, or what, or something else?
Part of our policy, if it is legal to have our policy say that there'd be, if the first day of school is a major religious holiday, then the school will start the following day.
Do we have a policy on? We don't have any policies on that right now.
No, we don't. But can we make a policy?
Oh,
yeah, we should at least get some kind of opinion on how we call it. Our policy is we on the school calendar, we can say we're starting on June 8th, or I'm sorry, September 8th. We could say September 20th if we really wanted to.
Yep.
Contractually, we can do that with our unions, but obviously that hurts us at the end of the year.
Right.
And it's really just how we quantify it more than anything else. And
right.
I don't want to, Mike talked about liability, I want to make sure that we don't have any by how
No, I
we
agree.
define this day.
Right,
Yep.
and just so I understand what everyone says, the committee would not consider having a PD day on the 7th, correct? The school would be shut down, it would not be open.
Right.
Right. Because then that wouldn't be fair to the teachers.
Correct.
Right.
Chairman Gates, if I might, the other school districts have those holidays off already. So I think we'll check with our have Rosh Hashanah off. I think Sharon does, and there might be one other school district at least. So there's not precedent there. I think what the state requires is that you have 180 days.
Mhm.
And then the other stuff is contractual, like ending it by June 30th and things like that. So we'll check, but I'm sure we're on solid ground. It's school committee's purview to decide when school starts and when it ends.
So do we want to make a motion to have the first day of school be September 8th based upon approval by our council?
No, we can just
We can do it.
You can just vote it.
do it. And that, but I mean, if we want to have a policy, I think we should review that with council, for separation of church and state, type thing.
You can suggest that to the policy subcommittee once we get through next year.
Yeah, really.
All right, so I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion.
So I actually have another question on the calendar too. Bill, if you scroll down, is June 20th, is that a day off from school, or is that are you just saying that the 20th is when Juneteenth is observed?
That is a day off of school. That's a holiday. That's a state holiday. It's the commencement of the emancipation of the enslaved people of the U.S.
Okay, that's fine. We haven't had that day off in the past, so I was
That's new.
questioning it.
Yeah.
That's new this year. Yeah,
Okay.
that's
Yeah.
new. So the last day will be moved to the 21st.
Great.
Yeah. All right. Mike, why don't you give the motion again?
I'll make a motion that the first day of school in the 2021-22 school year be September 8th.
I second.
Motion by Mr. Hayes, second by Miss Brandolini.
Janice.
Sorry, Miss Lindblom. Sorry.
Can I
Leo,
ask one more question?
Yes, Mr. Long.
So Bill, that means kindergarten will be pushed out to the 9th?
Yes.
No. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, so those are the only two changes to the calendar, right? The 8th would be the
You can
first
get
day of
all
school,
the
the 9th
kindergarten
would be the
parents to
first day of
agree to
kindergarten.
send them back on the 1st.
Well, I don't know, does it affect early childhood? Does it affect the ECC? Is there a contractual number of days after the first day of school?
I think ECC should be fine, but I will look into all those and confirm. I think that's our prerogative.
I just want to make sure that's clear in the motion. But I think 8th and 9th is fine.
So are we voting just the first day of school, or are we voting this calendar?
The calendar.
All right, so we have a motion by Hayes and a second by Miss Lindblom. Any further discussion? All right, I'll do a roll call vote. Miss Brandolini,
Yes.
Mr. Long,
Yes.
Mr. Hayes,
Yes.
Miss Gates is yes, Miss Lindblom,
Yes.
and Mr. Hayes.
Yes.
All right. Get the press rolling. Get the press. Ruth Thompson, you on here? All right. So first day of school for all those that are still out there looks to be was just approved as September 8th. Okay. Moving forward, Miss Arnold, leadership report.
Here I am. Thank you, Chairman Gates, School Committee. I am going to share my screen now for my presentation. Although I think, Bill, who's still sharing that? Okay, thank you. Okay. So, so for my assistant superintendent report, I have created a Prezi. I feel like I'm in competition with Dr. Dutch, but that's just in my own mind because he's the master. Anyways, to get going, this is what I'll be talking about tonight. The overview is curriculum maps, specifically sharing them with the public, the DEI director search update, and then a little bit about assessments. So first, curriculum maps. A couple of weeks ago, I put out a link in my contribution to Thursday Thoughts for our public site for curriculum access. So we have created public-facing curriculum maps that people can go in and access all of the curriculum maps for grades 4 and 5 ELA and math, grade 8 all content areas. So that currently those are all available. On April 12th, we will have grades 2 and 3 ELA and math available, and grade 7, again, all content areas. May 30th, grades K and 1, ELA and math, and grade 6, all content areas. And I know I've shared this before with all of you, but I'm very excited that we have made this much progress. And then next year, you will see, as the year goes on, you will see grades 9, 10, 11, and 12 with all content areas. It's important to note that curriculum is not static. It is a living thing. And when you make a curriculum map, it's going to be a living document. So even though we have things up there now, there may be things that change according to standards perhaps, or, you know, curriculum that we determined it had a shortcoming on a certain content skill. But the point is, it's a living process. Okay. Oops. Oops. Okay. DEI Director Search Update. Last week, Thursday, we interviewed, we determined our 5 semifinalists to interview, and we completed 2 on Tuesday, March 16th, and 2 more on Wednesday, March 17th. Next up, we will determine the finalists on tomorrow rather, to recommend to the superintendent. We have 1 more interview to do tomorrow night before that. And then we will, as a committee, meet and determine the finalists to recommend to the superintendent. And also those finalists will conduct the finalist forums on Wednesday. We've already sent a link out for that, but we can resend it again. We will resend it again tomorrow. If people attend the forum, we're going to ask them to, like last time, fill out a feedback forum form. That's easy. So that we know how the public felt not only about the finalists, but also about the process. Because we learned a lot from the last forum feedback that which made us restructure this forum this time around. Then this is the rest of our timeline. So when we give the superintendent the names, which we will give to him Tuesday, tomorrow night after our meeting, and he kind of began reference checks, and then I stated the forum feedback due, and then the following week, Superintendent Burkett can begin to interview finalists. And then the following week, he can interview the candidates, complete the reference checks, and then I believe this aligns with his timeline that he reported this evening earlier, that he will be able to introduce the new director, diversity, equity, and inclusion at the April 12th meeting. So assessments. So there have been a couple of questions recently and a lot of interest on assessments for our students, specifically because we want to know about learning loss, right? So during the pandemic, our students had significantly reduced time on learning, it would seem. And of course, much of it was taught remotely, and then very little in-person learning. So how did that affect their learning, and where are they now? So I'll just give a little information about assessments. So there are 3 purposes of assessment. You want to assess, if you want to conduct an assessment of learning. So assessment of learning means that you're looking at what does the student know that is aligned to the curriculum and the content area standards or the framework. So that's what of learning is, trying to figure out where they are. For learning is ongoing and actionable. And so it's just something like might be a formative assessment, which would tell you where the student is exactly in their understanding of content or skills. And that is good for teachers because they can then inform their instruction with that data. And assessment as learning it really involves the student in their own learning, and project-based learning is probably a great example of that. It involves student assessment as learning. It should be focused on problem solving, critical thinking, and those things come to bear when students have the opportunity to participate in project-based learning. Also, other examples of that would be like peer reflections and self-reflections. So those are the reasons you assess students. So then there are 6 types of assessments. And the first one's diagnostic. So you think about that as like a pretest. You can figure out exactly where a student is, what's their level of understanding. And so again, you can determine what the entry point is for that student. A formative assessment is going to be something that you measure students' current knowledge, current growth in understanding of either content or skills. And those things, again, should look for growth. And those things are really, those happen all the time with teachers. You can do it formally or informally. Oftentimes you think about a formative assessment as a test, but it doesn't have to be. It could be something like a presentation in the class. It could be an exit ticket. There are many different things you can do in the class with a formative assessment. A summative is usually the either end of year or end of module assessment of learning and understanding. An ipsative assessment is something that is focused on growth mindset. So it's like a second try to take the test over if the student did really poorly, giving the student the option to retake the test or another version of the test covering the same topics. So that's important because it really helps to boost students' self-confidence and it's sort of personalized at the same time. Norm reference tests are tests that are normed against a certain population, like a student peer group or student cohort. And we do that, like MCAS is norm referenced, APs are norm referenced. And then criterion referenced is an assessment that demonstrates students' understanding for certain standards or skills or content. So those are the reasons for assessment and what those assessments we use are. So first, talk about elementary first. And in elementary right now, the focus is on ELA and math. So one you've heard a lot about is DIBELS, and DIBELS is for ELA, or K-2, as you can see, is about phonemic awareness, letter knowledge, phonics knowledge, which are conducted, and that kind of assessment is conducted in a series of 1-minute probes. And those are really strong indicators of reading success. And we use that also as a screener. We have established, the literacy specialists along with Megan have established cut scores, benchmark cut scores, and that gives us information about where students are in relation to that, and helps us to make intervention groups build RTI systems. And we do those 3 times a year for K-2. And progress monitor in between. So it's not like you just take it once in the fall, once in the winter, and then once in the spring, but constantly progress monitor students as well, depending on where their gaps may be. And then for 1 through 4, it's a little bit different. We are using it to assess reading fluency and accuracy through 1-minute oral reading probes. This is for decoding of grade level passages. And it's also to do with rate, the rate of being able to read, because not rapid reading, but reading at a higher rate leads to better comprehension. And then 3 times a year with progress monitoring as necessary. So for K-5 math, oh, wait, I'm sorry, my other ELA. So we have a RANRAS assessment, which is norm reference. And this is for automaticity, naming automaticity. So this is a nationally normed test, and it predicts reading difficulties in early readers and tells us to provide early intervention with whatever their identified need is within that rapid naming system. STAR is also norm referenced. We've had this for a number of years. It assesses comprehension in decoding and vocabulary. It's a nationally normed test, and the thing that we use STAR for first and foremost is growth scores. So then again, if we have set our benchmark cut scores, and we use them to identify those specific difficulties that we need to target for the students. And that's 3 times a year. Now we'll go to math. So math, as you know, we have Eureka Math. It's our new program this year, finishing up the first year. It is, they have assessments that come with the program, and we have standard skills-based informative assessments. K-5, all grades have online and paper Edulastic certified exit tickets, mid-module, end of module assessments. Edulastic is an online assessment that aligns with Eureka Math. It's really been a great tool, especially now. Most students take it online, but the younger students, it's hard for them to do so. That's why we have paper. Grade 1, again, paper assessment. And you can see that it's all about operations and base 10 standards. Whoops, I always do that. I apologize. Grades 2 to 5, we have designed common assessments for MCAS, or they align to standards and skills that we always see targeted on MCAS through the years. And again, this is an online platform through Eureka. More math. Symphony benchmark is a norm reference test. We like Symphony because it tells us a lot about our at-risk students and what we need to do to help them. In kindergarten, they don't take the assessment until January. Give them a chance to get oriented. And then for 1 through 5, assesses students' math skills at their grade level. We have a percentile score that students receive and growth score, which is what we're looking at more than anything. And again, nationally normed and looking at how they perform grade level with their peers. Symphony benchmark is worth noting to give a plug for Paul, and I think it was last name, who is a Scituate resident who created Symphony Math and has given us free access to this forever. And it has really grown across the country. It's a very well-regarded assessment. And then middle school, start with ELA and math. These are the assessments they use in ELA, IXL, Common Lit, Listen-Wise, classroom assignments, end of year assignments. And then math also uses IXL, district created assessments, criteria, grade 6 benchmark, 7 unit test, 8 unit test, and end of the year assessment. IXL is a criterion referenced assessment. So looking for understanding of the standards and curriculum from students, but it's also responsive so that it can focus on specific skills that a student might be missing based on the assessment. So that's a dynamic one. For STE, again, common unit test, performance-based assessments. So in other words, not just taking a paper test, but doing something like some sort of presentation, writing a blog, conducting a lab, different things. And then social studies, common assessments, and consistent assessments and expectations to gauge student progress. For language, common assessments, test projects, and papers. So as you can see, the assessments at the middle school, they do not have the variety of criterion and norm referenced assessments. Most of the assessments they use at the middle and high school are either created through the teachers create them, and they are great creators of assessments. But we don't really have, they create criterion referenced assessments, but we don't have a lot of norm reference data until you get the MCAS or AP results, but those don't really help inform your instruction because you get them too late in the year and those kids are graduated by the time you get that information. So, okay. High school. You can see we have SATs and AP for math and ELA and STE. Performance-based assessments again, and in STE. Social studies, common assessments, and same for world language. And then K through 12, we have access testing K through 12 ELL students. So this is a state test to measure progress for students who are in the ELL category. And then we do have assessments. We do collect data for social emotional development and well-being. So I know that this is a particular concern, especially this year. And we do have 2 different assessments we use, and we have been using for a few years. We've been using PAIR for 5 years. So PAIR, the assessment the students take is called the Holistic Student Assessment. It's done independently. They fill it out, and that's for grades 5 through 10. When the teachers get those results, they can then make interventions, or they can see where students need support. And there's a lot of great data we get from that. The other survey that's used in the high school is youth risk behavior survey, and that's done in the fall. And we didn't do that this year. That's a state mandated survey, which keeps the nurses very busy when we do it. So that's for grades 7 through 12. Okay, that is the end of the presentation. Does anybody have any questions or comments for me?
Wow, that was a lot, Jen.
I know, sorry.
I'm going to open up to the committee. Any questions or comments? Well,
No, just that there seemed to be a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Assessments.
And I have to thank the department chairs and curriculum coordinators for providing all of the information about the assessments. That was a lot of work for them too.
Thank you to you, Jen, and your staff.
Thank you.
anyone else? Mike, Mr. Hayes, you're muted.
I just want to agree with Janice and thank Jen and the everyone involved in this report. I think it's very good information for not only the school committee, but for everybody tuning in. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you again, Ms. Arnold. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. Now is our second and final opportunity for public comment for those that are here. If you could raise your remote hands, I will call on you, ask you to identify yourself and your address. If you're not comfortable with your address, please state your school affiliation. We'll start with Steve McGuire.
Awesome. Thanks for letting me share. I appreciate it. So 14 Foxwell Lane, Steve McGuire, I teach at the high school. Just a couple of comments about the calendar. Please take into account too that Rosh Hashanah is a 2-day high holiday. And so it actually ends on sunset of the day we're supposed to begin school. So that might be the first day of school for some kids. So it's worth exploring that a little further. Also, I looked at, like Mr. Burkhead did, I looked at a couple other districts that recognize and actually have both of those, both high holidays off, both Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah. And they have those days off, and they also have Good Friday off as well, and they call it Good Friday. So they recognize a couple different religious holidays and allow them both to be named what they're called. So just something to consider as you're going forward. And the other thought was, it was mentioned at the last school committee meeting, and I don't know if it was meant in jest or if it was an actual thought, but having taught through this, I wanted to share. So someone had mentioned at the last meeting about potentially eliminating the February and April vacation and doing one vacation in March. And I taught in a district that did that, and I just wanted to firsthand attest that it was awful. And while all the other districts, while it sounds like a nice idea and that we'll get out a week earlier, at the moment it actually arises, all the other districts around you are off on the 2 other holidays and you're off for 1 week. So just 2 things to consider about the calendar. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would agree, Mr. McGuire, as I said before, Mr. Long informed me that Rosh Hashanah was 2 days. I observed it and didn't even know that it was 2 days. So that's interesting. But I think that the school committee determined that because it was the first day of school that we would observe it. And I also understand your reference to Yom Kippur. That is the more religious of holidays. But again, if it fell on the first day of school, I think that we would observe it then. So thank you. Eileen Roddy.
Hi, thank you. I just actually wanted to acknowledge Miss Arnold, you know, on this being the occasion of the announcement of her retirement. I just wanted to say that I worked with Miss Jennifer Arnold for over 10 years, first at Jenkins School, where she was my principal for 6 years. I've also had the pleasure of working collaboratively with her on many committees throughout the years. And I have to say without reservation that Miss Arnold is one of the most authentic, caring, and genuine professionals I've ever worked with. 100% of the time, she holds the well-being of students and staff as the most pressing and precious part of her job. I have been among many educators who over the years have been able to safely seek counsel from Miss Arnold, knowing that when I went to her with any problem at all, I could depend on her to approach any issue or problem with kindness, professionalism, humor, and understanding. I'd like Miss Arnold to know that she will be leaving a legacy of leadership that has made us better teachers and better students. As an educator, I think that that is all we can hope for when we retire. And I wish Miss Arnold well in all of the challenges that await her. She will be truly missed. You will be truly missed.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rowdy. Appreciate it. I agree with your comments.
Agree 100%, obviously. Also, Jen, I don't think that anyone's we hire after your retirement is ever going to outwork you either.
I don't know. I don't know. But thank you so much, Eileen. Can't tell you how much I appreciate that. And you're right. All we can hope for is that we impact people in a positive way. And to hear that you share that, it's choking me up a little bit. So thank you.
Welcome.
All right, next up, and I think after 4 years, I finally can pronounce your name correct, Milena. Milena Davidova. Did I get it right?
Yes, close.
Excellent.
Milena Davidova, yep.
Great.
Thanks very much for all your hard work, everyone. And thank you, Miss Arnold, as well. And we wish you much success in your retirement and relaxation, hopefully, too. I had a quick question about the calendars. So I'm understanding the vote tonight was just about the first day of school, but there was some question about Columbus Day and why are we perhaps still holding on to that name when other districts have already changed that or scrapped that name? So is there any talk about, or would there be, I'm not phrasing it as a question, perhaps there would be some sort of a group under the DEI to talk about that? Could there be potentially enough time to consider such a change for this coming school year?
Well, I know just your address.
So no, yeah, I have a 7th grader and a 9th grader.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll respond quickly. The DEI director will not be in place by or in time to do that potentially. But I would anticipate that would be something that will come to their purview for following years. I don't know, Mr. Burkett, if you have any other comments regarding Columbus Day and other named days off.
Yeah, I think we I don't disagree with that. And I also agree that our whole calendar, these conversations that came up tonight are very important. There's a lot of research that should be done into them. And I think it's a good task for our DEI director. And certainly one of the reasons we're bringing them in to be a professional on these topics. Part of our research, I don't know, I think it was in the backup documents I did share, just, not that right or wrong, just the information we have is that we often look around at what other towns are doing. And the towns that have voted on their calendar right now, Columbus Day is on the calendar for Hingham, Duxbury, Marshfield, and Plymouth. The only one that we found right now, because I don't think it's been recognized by the state yet, is Brookline celebrates that day as Indigenous People Day. And then the calendars for Cohasset, Norwell, Pembroke, and Weymouth that we looked at were not voted on as of that. So that's just FYI only, just for the community's sake and for your sake, that the information and research that we have done.
Right. I think, if I can add to that, I think that the question isn't whether or not that day will be a school day. I think it's always probably not going to be a school day. It just depends on what the name is, I believe, is what the discussion is. Okay.
And also, if I just add, I think on our previous discussion of the calendar, we had a brief discussion that the Commonwealth still has not changed that for that name, and it was just carried forth on that basis, but it certainly is, among other things, that it will be discussed as we go forward, certainly.
I agree. I would say it's something that we had hoped to resolve, whatever for this calendar, but just obviously other things took precedence. But I think it's on the minds of everybody, and I would agree it's one of the things that DEI director will be looking at.
And we generally we tweak the calendar right up through June, so.
Yeah. So we'll see. All right. Any other comments or questions? Great. Moving on. Acceptance of minutes. We have minutes from, where is it here? October 19th. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes from October 19th, 2020?
Move to approve the minutes as presented.
Motion by Mr. Long. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Lindblom. Roll call vote. Ms. Brandolini.
Yes.
Mr. Hayes.
I'm going to abstain.
Yes, you were not there.
I don't know where I was, but I guess I wasn't here.
Actually, I think. Actually, now that you say it, it looks like the votes were 4-0.
Yeah.
But it shows that you were there. So maybe you came late.
I thought that as well, but
Right.
not a big deal.
Just want to make sure. Okay. Gates is a yes. I'm sorry, and I lost my spot. Ms. Lindblom
Yes.
and Mr. Long.
Yes.
So 4-0 with one abstention, correct?
Right.
All right. Thank you. Now, subcommittee updates, the South Shore Educational Collaborative, Superintendent Burkhead.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Gates. Just a quick update on the budget process for the South Shore Collaborative. The financial projection for the FY21 indicated that there was a positive financial balance at the close of the school year. For the FY22 budget, that was also discussed at the meeting. The board reviewed the information and will be prepared to vote on the budget in the April meeting. You have a copy of that information. And the other information shared at the meeting was that the rental space at Randolph High School will be renovated for the return of the collaborative programming for September of 21. And finally, the board approved the sale of 2 12-passenger vans to Randolph Public Schools for $500 each.
Great. Those vans must have been in bad shape.
I'm not sure, but it was a good deal.
All right, any comments or questions? If not, I think we can finish up this agenda. I didn't have any correspondence. Anyone have anything? There are no warrants, so we don't get to hear Dr. Dutch. Any other business?
I have a question about the April 12th meeting.
Yes.
Is that when we're expected to vote on the MOU?
So we spoke about that earlier. We'll probably schedule a special meeting before then.
Okay.
Once we get timing of that. But yes.
Town meeting, so we have to be at town meeting.
Yep.
Tricky.
Yeah. So that school committee meeting on the 12th is generally just that kind of a placeholder, really, for anything that comes up that's relative to the town meeting. But we may have to add some other agenda items on there as well, just because we won't have one until later in April after that one. But it'll be dictated by the progress on the MOA.
And just so you all know, I won't be going to town meeting again because I'll be within the 14-day post-second vaccine period. So
Okay. That's fine. You'll be our school committee will be remote, so we'll we'll figure that out. We'll figure that out somehow.
Yep.
And I think that is it. So officially April 12th is our next school committee. I anticipate we will have one prior to then. Most likely early April would be my guess. Any other comments or questions? If not, do I have a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting at 9:13?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Hayes, there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Long. Roll call vote, Ms. Simon.
Yes.
Ms. Brandolini.
Yes.
Gates is yes. Mr. Hayes.
Yes.
And Mr. Long.
Yes.
Meeting is adjourned. Thanks very much. Have a good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Take care.